Time is 6 p.m. I call to order this meeting of the Oconee County Council, September 5th, 2023. First, we'll begin with a moment of silence. Mr. David Root, would you lead us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Dearest Father, thank you for this day that you made, that you created. And you created us, and so many things that we ought to be grateful for, and I know we take for granted a lot of it. But each day I pray that we greet it with appreciation and gratitude and make the most of it, and make the most of all the opportunities, including opportunities like this evening to do the work of the public of this county. Help us to do it well, give counsel wisdom and guidance, and let this be your meeting, guided by your principles of love and truth. I pray in your name. Amen.
Mr. Luther Law, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of August 15th, 2023, regular meeting minutes.
Make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Hart.
Second.
Second, Mr. Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I was not present.
Voted 4-0.
Okay. Next, we have proclamation 2023-05, a proclamation honoring Mr. Albert Lamar Bales, Jr. Whereas Albert Lamar Bales, Jr., a well-known and respected resident of Walhalla, South Carolina, dedicating nearly 50 years of his life serving the citizens of Oconee County. And whereas Mr. Bales was married to Rosemary Fort Bales, had 2 children and 3 grandchildren. And whereas Mr. Bales served on the first Oconee County Council from 1975 to 1978, where was elected as the first council chair. And whereas Mr. Bales continued his public service as a Walhalla City Councilman, Mayor of Walhalla, and on the Board of Directors of the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. And whereas Mr. Bales was also a faithful member of the Walhalla Rotary Club and a member of and former elder of Walhalla Presbyterian Church. And whereas Mr. Bales had a wealth of knowledge, was a well-loved and respected member of the community, he was dedicated to helping others in Oconee County, and his citizens are better for it. Whereas Mr. Bales passed away on July 13th, 2023, preceded in death by his son, Trace Bales. Now therefore, we, the Oconee County Council, do hereby recognize and honor Mr. Lamar Bales for his lifetime of commitment and service to the citizens of Oconee County, approved and adopted this 5th day of September, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
I'd like discussion.
Stand by. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'm grateful to know both of them personally for a long time, and service above self is what Lamar always stood for. Spent countless hours making this county better, and appreciate what y'all have done and the legacy that is going to carry on forever in Oconee County. So thank you, Rosemary, for what you continue to do, and especially for the great husband Mr. Lamar was to you, and a great citizen of Oconee County.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any other comments? All in favor?
That is 5-0.
probably organizing heaven right now.
He is.
1, 2, 3.
Next, we have proclamation of 2023-06, a proclamation recognizing the 50th anniversary of Oconee Nuclear Station. Whereas Duke Energy's Oconee Nuclear Station, located on Lake Kiwi in Seneca, South Carolina, began Unit 1 commercial operation on July 16th, 1973, followed by Unit 2 and Unit 3 in 1974. Whereas Oconee Nuclear Station established the first accredited operator training program in the country, and it was the first nuclear station to generate 100 million kilowatt hours of electricity. Whereas Oconee Nuclear Station was the second nuclear station in the United States to have its license renewed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for an additional 20 years, and the first nuclear station to achieve 3 million safe work hours. Whereas Oconee Nuclear Station employs more than 800 workers, with additional contract workers employed during refueling outages. It generates enough power to serve 1.9 million homes, and Duke Energy contributed over $6.1 million to charities in South Carolina in 2022. And whereas Oconee County is proud to be the home of Duke Energy's Oconee Nuclear Station since its groundbreaking in 1967. Now therefore, the Oconee County Council does hereby extend its appreciation and congratulations to Duke Energy's Oconee Nuclear Station on its 50th anniversary of operation and service to the citizens and community of Oconee County, approved and adopted this 5th day of September, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, from all the citizens of Oconee County that pay taxes, thank you for the nuclear station and what they provide in taxes, but also in jobs and shaping this county. I'd hate to know what Oconee County would be without the nuclear station, and grateful it's on the Oconee side and not on the Pickens side. So, but thankful for what y'all continue to do.
I'll be abstaining from voting just for the appearance of any conflict. All right, all in favor?
Thank you, buddy. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And next, we have county attorney comments. Mr. David Root.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just have one. I need a motion to remove first reading of ordinance 2023-17. This is regards Project Golf. We haven't received the final documents back, but we should have those for the next meeting.
So
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mullins. All in favor?
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Next, we'll have county administrative comments. Mr. Amanda Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I had with me this evening a special guest who doesn't typically have the honor of attending council meetings, as he has a typical position here as 8:30 to 5, but I did ask County Treasurer Greg Nowell to join us this evening. As annually, we go over the county's many bank account statements with balance dates of June 30th. In the past, there has been some question from both staff, members of the public, and council regarding the numerous bank statements Oconee County has, restricted and unrestricted funds. And I felt it would be best if Mr. Nowell could just give a brief overview of what those restricted funds are, what the restrictions are, what the unassigned fund balance is, and how the county may utilize, for instance, school district funds in the county banking account, and that balance be reflected on our June 30th statements. So with no further delay, Mr. Greg Nowell.
All right, restricted funds are exactly what it sounds like. They're restricted by the state. If y'all put it down on the line item on a tax bill, it goes for bond, retirement. That money's gotta go into retirement. It can't be spent anywhere else. It's gotta go strictly toward bond retirement. And right now, we're holding about 3/4 of a year's worth of balance on all the bonds we pay. Now, several years ago, it was up to 1 year, and the old auditor decided to bring that down some. Which, if you have a year's worth of payments, your bond rates are gonna be good. And that's why we've tried to keep it at 1 year. So I'm here to answer questions.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So, on our two printouts here, which color are the accounts are we talking about, I guess?
All the ones that are in gold are restricted.
That's restricted.
Yes, so you have two separate handouts. On your second page, about 2/3 of the way down the page, you'll see a blue highlighted portion that says county funds. This is the total accrual of all county funds, and that's like county operational items. In your green are investment funds, and in like a goldenrod color is your total funds held for others. I think the significance about this is we were questioned a few weeks ago, or at least I was presented a question a few weeks ago regarding the numerous banking accounts Oconee County has in Oconee County government's name. And in those banking accounts are funds held for others. For instance, we collect and distribute all taxes for each municipality within the county. We are holding the Kiwi Fire bond. We are holding school bonds. So while there may be a significant number as the quote-unquote bottom line, not all of the funds in those bank accounts are eligible, even with 3 readings and a public hearing, for county expense. Like, y'all couldn't change certain restricted funds for county allocations for any other reason. The simplified top sheet, which is a gold and yellow one-pager, I believe it was on the very top. We also had a question, I believe, at the last council meeting regarding the county's fund balance, the assigned or unassigned or restricted or non-restricted fund balance. And this is just a overview of what those combined accounts are. So what that top page is a summary basically of what what all of these accounts are, just summarized in a more easy to access document at a glance, if you will. So at this time, the county's unassigned fund balance as of June 30th, 2022, audited number, because we don't have 2023 audited yet, is $11,260,698.
So we have $11,260,000 in free cash that we could use.
Correct, that is unrestricted and unassigned.
The 67 million in investments, is that made up of restricted, unrestricted?
Both.
Is that combined, is some of these,
Which figure?
the fund balance account amount, is that tied into the investment line item, or is it two separate
It's
numbers?
two separate ones.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so back to the unassigned fund balance. So that's basically what we call a rainy day fund.
That's it.
And basically, the household wants to have 3 months in a rainy day fund. So basically, we have set a goal for 2025 to have, to have 25% of the general fund and maybe some of these special revenue funds that has been created in the last month. So we have 25% of operating cash. So if something goes haywire, we won't go down the drain. Right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Price is here. I'm working off of memory here. I believe at this time with the passage of the second reading for the proposed 2024 amended budget, we would be in deficit of 1.6 million roughly for the 2024 amended budget for the fund balance policy, which puts us well on track to meet that goal.
So all the investment account, the 67 million, how much of that is restricted? And how come the non-restricted isn't counted within the fund balance?
Back to Mr. Nowell.
Say that one more time.
The $67 million that's invested, how much of that is restricted? And then how come the unrestricted amount isn't counted as part of the fund balance?
I got an answer for you, but there's some restricted in the investments and some unrestricted. If we leave it in the bank account, it's not gonna make any money, so we throw it out there. Now, I'll tell you, the earnings off the unrestricted have to go back in that fund. They can't be used for you.
Yeah.
In other words, if it earns money in the investment account, it stays in the bond sinking fund.
If you look at, it's important to know that there's not $100 million
Oh,
in
yes,
cash.
absolutely, if you look at the
Yeah.
totals. If you don't break it out in restricted and unrestricted, if you're false positive.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to oversimplify this to a way that's just basic, simple understanding of how this many bank accounts impacts us is, so for instance, you're running a household and your paycheck is $500. So your bank account says you have $500 in your bank account. In your head, you know you have to pay your rent for $100, which that's in a Lord's world, but rent's $100. While your bank account still may reflect $500, you know that you have to take out $100 for your rent. You know that you have $50 to pay in your utilities, but your bank account says $500. You know that you have to take out $50 for your car payment, but still your bank account is still reflecting that $500. Within a 2-week period, once you start processing the payments and obligations that you have out of that paycheck, your bank account may eventually catch up, but it won't be reflective of the date and time that your paycheck arrives in that bank, regardless of your outstanding obligations, because they have not gone out of your account yet. So when you look at some of the unrestricted funds, like on the number 2 handout, there's a highlighted portion. I don't know what I did. I got that one. On the first page, you'll see there's an additional column on the on the right-hand side of the page. You'll see that these things have to come out of those banking accounts. Those are totals. So on June 30th, for instance, we may have an entire outstanding payroll that has not come out of that bank account yet because that pay period has not ended at that time. While our fiscal year does start on July 1st and end on June 30th, it doesn't mean that the payments for everything stops on the exact date of June 30th. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
I hope that helps some. I had a question from a local newspaper that was asking for bank statements as of 6:30. And last year, I haven't seen Riley. Riley, are you here?
He's not here.
Okay. Oh, hi Norma, saw you actually. So last year, I did have the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Morningstar and go through that, but I didn't feel like we gave the opportunity for you, council, or me to explain this in an open forum. It was more of a sit-down one-on-one. And Norma, if you want to sit down while Riley's on vacation, I can do that as well.
Yeah, because not all revenue comes in equally over 12 months, so you get a big charge of revenue that you have to,
We get a big charge of revenue between November and March 15th.
and then that carries you the whole
Here's
fiscal
the
year.
whole way.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Couple things. Touching base on the fund balance, I know in 2016, there had been a lot of money had been removed out of there from the Focus project. So we'd gotten that unassigned fund balance extremely low. And I know there was a lot of want to change that, to get that in the right place, so which is why we've really worked to be very frugal in our spending, and I think that comes from the budgeting from administration then and now, council then and now, to make sure that we're not spending, because we have not spent, John, you've been on too, we have not spent what we have budgeted in each year, and that's gone back into that fund balance to get that up. So, if I'm not, I believe the estimate of 25 was around 14 million. So I know there was a statement made about going over the general government fund, but, you know, there's been part of that general government fund that's been in here since the creation of the budget that we use, that some of it's been removed out to keep that lower, but that is still, we need to make sure as council to kind of understand that still needs to be budgeted in that fund balance, because just because it got moved out of general fund and put somewhere else doesn't mean that we don't have to pay for it. So I just wanted to note that I think the goal was around 14 million, if I remember properly. And we've done a good job of that, and I appreciate y'all, as department heads, kind of making sure to keep our spending under control. That's why, if we look at the growth of that, I don't know how much you have with the growth of the fund balance in the last, 3 to 4 years, but you've done a good job. If we're spending 100% of our budget, the fund balance obviously is not going to grow. So, and that's has not happened in years past. The other part of this that I think is good is there's some statements out there that were made that the county's got 80 or 90 million dollars in the bank, and we could go a year without collecting taxes and be okay. I don't agree with that statement. I think that statement's false, and it's not made by anybody on council, just to clear that up. But I just wanted to that was some conversation that happened at some meetings that was literally talking about we don't need to collect taxes. And I think talking about where these accounts are and the usage of this money and what it can be used for is very important. I know that's kind of what you're here today to kind of clear that up. So just because we have it in the account doesn't mean we can go spend it on fire trucks or police cars or anything like that. The fund balance, council could do whatever you wanted to do with that, as long as you understood that we still got bills to pay. And that's happened before, and been good investments. So I'm not saying they're not. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them return quicker than others. But I just wanted to kind of make that statement that I think the number one goal in this is to make sure that information that comes out there is not showing us having money that where we don't need to collect taxes. We need to keep taxes low, but unfortunately, we have to continue to collect taxes. So, and I know Ms. Brock's aware of that statement that was made, and there was I got a couple of phone calls on it, that we have $80-90 million in the bank, and that is true,
It's true, but we can't spend it.
but we can't spend it. If we did spend $80 or $90 million or didn't collect taxes, what would occur?
It'd be terrible. It'd be defaulting on a lot of stuff. We sure don't want that to happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for commenting. I mean, I think it's important to understand that it's money that's allocated for already committed expenses. already committed budgets, to carry you through. Thank you for coming and speaking and laying that.
Thank
You have more to add?
No, we're holding on the bond money for the fire truck. Whenever the fire truck gets delivered, we got that money available.
And the ARPA money, is it still in the accounts?
Yes, sir.
It's sitting in an investment account.
And we collect for the cities too, right?
Oh, yeah, we pay the cities every month,
Okay.
15th of the following month.
I think, Ms. Brock, you said it best, it's kind of like your own account. You get your paycheck, you look, you have all this money, but it's already spent.
It's already spent. It's going out. Once we tabulate how much we've collected, it's going right back out the door the 15th. So the first of the month, we're sitting on all the city's money that we collected that month. It's going to go out by the 15th of the following month. And for the debt service also, on the bills, we collect it, slide it over to a different fund.
Do we charge the cities anything to collect taxes?
We charge them the penalties we collect on late fees. And that hadn't changed in 20 years. We need to look at that. City's taxing us.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll say one
Yes,
other
sir.
thing. These bills going out, half of them got city's tax on it. The postage on it's gone up tenfold since that contract was written. So the postage on it is 10 times what it was when that contract was written. Yeah, city tax. So we really need to look at that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Noel.
Yes, you may go.
Yeah, doing stuff. All right, thank you all.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Now was late for dinner.
Okay.
He's happy, I apologize.
Ms. Brock, any other? Ms. Brock, any other comments, Administrator?
Mr. Chairman, no, I do not believe I have any additional at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Up next. Next we have public comment session. Ms. Jennifer, is anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir. The first is Mr. Roy Stone to speak about Chaga Valley Road.
Evening, gentlemen. I feel like a worm in a chicken
Mr.
coop right
Stone.
now.
Mr. Stone,
I'd like to go over, as I live on 123.
Let me make a comment first. I kind of got distracted. So in public comment, we have 5 minutes.
Okay, that
And the
sounds good.
council will not, discuss out back with you, but we do have council member comment at the end. And when we get to 3 minutes, I'll hold up the yellow, 4 minutes, I'll hold up the yellow sign. When we get to 5, I'll hold up the stop sign. And if you would, please, when you come up, state your name for the record so that the microphone can catch it.
My name's Roy Stone, and I'm a retired deputy sheriff. I was EMT before that, instructor. I taught all over the South Carolina state. And my concern right now is I've had a tumor removed. I live on 123 Chaga Valley Road. Half of it is decent, another half of it is just a curve, old mountain road, tore up, and when it rains, you can barely get in there. I've talked to the chief of the fire department. If a fire breaks out, which is my major concern, there's no way he can get a pumper truck down there to put the fire out. So consequently, there's about 12, 13 homes in there that would be completely destroyed. 2 of the homes, one guy is an invalid. He can't even get out of his wheelchair. And personally, the ambulance will not come down and get me in case something should happen again to me. I have to go on my own vehicle. The road is taken care of by the state up to a certain point. From there, it's complete havoc. When it rains, there's so many ruts in there, you can't get in. The area is located near Cobb Bridge. I don't know whether Mr. Davis probably does. This area is really becoming, the growth is unbelievable. Traffic now because of Raleigh Springs, Raleigh Falls, it's just got unbearable. And they make the U-turns in that road and everything. We're just not looking for a paved road. We're just looking to take care of and put gravel in the road that's existing. Or we cut it straight. It curves like this around the bend. And when it does, all that water washes in. Now, we're next to the river, and I do have Mr. Bader here. He's an engineer. I think he can explain the details a little better than I can. We've written Mr. Davis a letter concerning that. And we would like something done, anything, basically just cut it straight, put gravel on it, and have a grader come in maybe once every 3 months and just grade it. We're not, I understand the budgets, I understand all of that stuff, but we could sure use some help, and that's basically why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. William Bader, Tauber Valley Road.
William Bader, with 127 Chogga Valley Road. I moved up there about 3 years ago. Met through Councilman Davis. He contacted the county engineer. Kyle Reed came out, looked at it, and agreed, yeah, we need to do something. He's had requests from the fire department. They've had trouble. They cannot get down the road if there's ever a fire out there. There's several houses now. The issue seems to be that there was a plat from a bankrupt development that was along the river, and they never gave an easement to the county for this piece of road. We're talking about 1,500 foot of road beyond the county maintenance now. Kyle looked at it, and they just want to come down the road, get the hill graded, and put a cul-de-sac there so that fire trucks and other service vehicles can go all the way up the road, which is in not bad shape once you get past the county maintenance. So all we're really asking for is some consideration of the county, and I don't know what mechanism we have to utilize for the non-easement that was in there. I don't quite understand all that, but it's a private road. It's not, an easement was never given. The power company has an easement through there. Blue Ridge has an easement, but there was never an easement given to the county. And the county indicated through Kyle that, yeah, we want to do something. We need the road too for our services. So we sit here 2 years later. I've heard no further action on it. That's why we're here, okay? Your consideration would really be appreciated, okay?
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Luke Moore, regarding the budget.
Hey everybody, Luke Moore back again. A couple of things as far as the budget goes. First, I'd like to say that what the guys are talking about, we pay Oconee County, I believe it's approximately $8 million a year in gas tax. I believe that's correct. And from what I understand, it's about $250,000 a mile to repave a road. Is that correct? Give or take. That's what I've heard. With that being the case, I'd like to know, number one, if our gas tax from inside the county is going out to state, are we getting back the percentage that we're putting in? I've reached out to DOT, spoke with Mr. James, I can't remember his last name, and he said nobody's ever asked him that question. So if we're putting in $8 million of tax off our gas every year and it's going to state, but it's going to places that have a higher population, we need to find a way, if possible, to keep that money in-house and see if we can take care of some of our own roads instead of giving our money away to take care of Florence, Greenville, wherever else. So I'm not sure, but I would love it if somebody would be willing to look into that. But as far as the budget, I'd like to get some clarification on a few things. I'm looking at some numbers here. And I believe this is off the backup material from the last meeting, maybe. And it shows that the general fund is down. And I know, Matt, that you put out a video explaining kind of some of where this was. But in that video, you said if people have questions, concerns, to kind of reach out to you. I've reached out to you 3 times over the last couple months, got no response. I come up here last meeting, spoke to you. You didn't address any of my questions. You did allow Amanda to address one, and I appreciate that. But you didn't address any of the questions I got, so as a representative of the county that I live in, I do feel like I should be able to communicate with you. But also, it appears that this budget here, we only focus on the general fund. The general fund is gone down from what you said, about $2.5 million. But when we look at the total here, numbers on these papers, is the grand total of fiscal year 2023, 2024, what was approved in June was $81,974,581. But it's saying that what the amended budget is when you go to total is $91,805,385. So that's a $10 million increase on the entire budgets that I can see in this paperwork, as opposed to only focusing on one portion. We're not really cutting the budget if we take it out of one portion and put it in another, and then only focus on the one portion we took it out of. We all want a frugal budget. We all want to save the taxpayers as much money as possible. But I do think a little transparency, or at least clarification if I'm misunderstanding. I'm sure I'm not the only one if I'm misunderstanding. But we should talk about the entire budget, because every bit of that comes from the taxpayer. The government has no money to spend or give away that it don't take from a taxpayer. So if it's our money, we should know where it's going. We should know what it is. We should know accurate numbers. And so I would like just some clarification, what that budget total is, not just the general fund. I want to know what the budget total is, what it was when it was passed, what it was in this latest amendment, and I'd also like to understand why. Now, let me make something clear. I want this budget to go down as much as possible. I want it to be as thin as it can be while getting the things done that need to be done, and I want us to vote on the things that we want as wants. I want all the needs paid for, and I want the wants to come second. So, we're in agreement on that. We want the same thing. But I want complete transparency. I want to know what's going on. And I've about lost my train of thought on that one. But it still remains the same. I know what it was. What I was going to say is, we went through the three public comments before the last budget was passed. And then after the public comment of the third reading, Mr. Durham, you personally made the changes to change the budget by millions of dollars, and then passed that without there being any public input on the amendment. It was done after the third public comment on the third reading. Why? That is not transparent. That is not what we should be doing. It's all of our money. We should understand what it is. It shouldn't be snuck in last minute. But either way, these are some of the questions. I hope you'll address them. Matt, I would love to talk to you. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine, but as a representative of the county and me as a citizen, I'd love to be able to talk to you. Thank y'all.
Mr. Randy Moore, regarding the building inspection schedule.
Good evening, Matt, Council, Amanda.
Hi there.
We haven't been introduced probably. I'm Randy Moore from 9112 West Oak Highway, Seneca. I'm a residential builder here in the county. I've built houses and done floors in this county all my life. I grew up here. Been here forever, but we're seeing some change that's problematic to the builders, it's problematic to the homeowners, so I want to read a few things to you as quickly as I can, and then I want to say a few things outside that, but so I don't miss my points. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and many other builders and property owners throughout the county. The builders, we are talking, we are discussing what's going on, what needs to be done, and I want y'all to understand, we're not fussing about it. We're like you guys, we're talking about it. What can be done, what do we need to do, what's within the realms of possibility for improvement. The topic is delays in getting an inspection. We feel that it is unacceptable to be waiting as long as we are for inspections. We may call in today and be told it's going to be 2 weeks before somebody can get there. Because quickly that impacts us immediately, the homeowner, by interest rates. The interest money that they pay on this thing while it sits there, if we fail an inspection, and it does happen, we may miss something like as simple as a nail guard. A nail guard can cost us another 2 weeks. That's a month of interest. If that happens 2 or 3 times during the process, it's a lot of interest to the homeowner. We then lose schedules from our subcontractors, our materials. it's a snowball effect. We believe the price we pay for permitting is plenty adequate to pay for prompt inspections. We'd like to point out that tract builders and very large projects are tying up the few inspectors. We ask that consideration be given as to how inspections are provided for these large projects. That's a specific request to be thinking about. Homeowners and builders are losing money, as I just mentioned, unnecessarily due to delays in inspections. Paying more interest, losing because of the subcontractor can't wait on us. He's got to go to another job. That costs the homeowner money, costs the builder money. Can't get materials in when we're supposed to. They can't bring them, so we got to get back on the schedule for delivery. Schedules are near impossible, and we believe this can and should be corrected. As you know, the cost of living has gone up quite a bit over the past few years. We all know that. With that said, I think the council should consider first raising the pay for the office employees and inspectors that are already employed by Oconee County for permitting and inspections. I also believe that future jobs posted should reflect a pay scale that will draw desired applicants for these openings. I think careful consideration needs to be given to the amount of money that the ladies in the office are making, the inspectors we have already. They're doing a good job. We ask a lot of them as builders. We do. We ask a lot of them. In summary, we're asking this council to take a close look at the income generated through the permitting process. We believe Oconee County permitting generates enough income to offer a pay scale that will draw qualified inspectors. We believe we're putting enough money in to pay for these inspectors. I'm asking for a public response to what I've said today. How and when can I expect a response? Now, that's one question. And now I've got a couple minutes, hopefully at least 1 minute. So I sat here, I'm glad I came this evening. I sat here and listened to a lot of discussion about budgets. I do want to ask a question. You can or may not answer it. The funds that we pay, when we write a check for a building permit, is any of that money dipped into for any other use in the county other than getting our inspections done? If it is, as builders, we want to know that, and we want to know that before the next meeting so we can prepare a discussion for that meeting. And again, I want to say, we're not here busting anybody's chops and don't want to put that vibe out. We're people in need, and not just a few builders, but all the builders and all the homeowners. We're in need. When we call for an inspection, it needs to be in a reasonable time. We want to know how the money's appropriated, and we want to know what you guys are going to do to try to fix the problem as timely as
Motion
possible.
for 2 minutes.
Get the motion.
Second.
On favor?
Extension.
So I have 2 minutes? Yes. I appreciate that. And we appreciate you, councilman. I know I'm not here often at all. I've only ever been in council meetings very few times in my life. I try to just stay out there doing what I do. I build houses. There's other representation of builders here, very prominent builders in this room listening right now. I don't know, some of you probably know who they are. We're asking that the county council, and Amanda, whatever avenue we need to take to open discussions, to be as productive as we can to fix this problem, because it's a very big problem. It is literally costing thousands and thousands of dollars to homeowners throughout the county. We're the backbone of this county. We built this county. I cut the timber personally where Applewood Shopping Center stands. You guys would never know that. That's how long I've been here. I cut that timber. I was just a kid. I love Oconee County, and I want to do good things here, and and I want my boys to continue to do good things here. But I want to ask you, and I've never directly asked the council and the county for anything directly, but I do want to ask you that you give this very careful consideration. Think about what these guys are earning. And quickly, I want to say, when I price a house to sell, I price it. I think but you know what it's really worth? It's really worth what somebody's willing to write a check for, what that person's willing to pay for it. So when we post a job, the price we put on that job is really worth what the qualified candidate is willing to come fill that job for. Consider that, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim Mann concerning the budget.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Ms. Brock, Mr. Root, Jim Mann, District 2 taxpayer. On August 8, 2023, the OCRP sent a letter of invitation to the county council for a public town hall meeting to discuss the 2024 budget and the budget approval process. Chairman Durham's response was received August 10th and cited during public comment at the last council meeting on August 15th. Council members Mr. Elliott, District 1, Mr. Davis, District 4, have also agreed to participate. To date, the OCRP has not received any response from Mr. Mize, District 3, or Mr. Hart, District 5. Council, the OCRP, that being the Oconee County Republican Party, is willing to delay the town hall to encourage as much council participation as possible. At this point, the OCRP hopes to hear back from Mr. Mize and Mr. Hart before sending a follow-up letter of invitation to council. Second point, Chairman Durham. It was announced today by WGOG that Mr. Roel Cruz, I think he's here tonight, was recently appointed as the new president of the Oconee County Conservatives, LLC. The news release also named you as the OCC board chairman, where previously the group's website listed you as president. Was this reorganization in response to complaints about your inability to objectively carry out your role as chairman of this council, while at the same time pushing the OCC's political views and agenda on the whole county? Third point, Chairman Durham, going back to June 6th, the county council meeting, which would have included the third and final reading of the proposed 2024 budget, you introduced material changes that Mr. Root described as amendments to the budget on third reading that would almost make the budget ordinance a new document, one that full council nor the public has had a chance to review. Sir, Mr. Chairman, my question of you is, will you confirm who were the other council members that were aware of these budget amendments prior to that meeting on June 6th? Thank you.
Mr. Art Pettit concerning the permit ban.
I'm Art Pettit, run Eyecatcher Signs in Seneca since 1989. And I appreciate you giving me this time tonight to address this moratorium on the billboards. And I want to start with a rhetorical question. And if you have the answer to it and you want to tell me later, that's fine. I'd love to hear it. Why was the ban or the moratorium put in place to begin with? What's the criteria that they use to make that judgment? I think over the past 2 years and the lockdown and COVID and all that we've gone through as a nation, we have seen some devastating things that have happened to the general public just because of the voices of one or two people. Dr. Anthony Fauci. How many people would be alive? How many businesses would still be operating and open if Trump would have told him to hit the door? And me growing up in the 60s, I remember when it was a regular thing to have prayer in school. Madeleine O'Hara came along. She didn't like it. One person. That's changed. What if we as freedom-loving conservatives would have stood up and began to fight back? How many lives would have been different? How many families would still be? together. I mean, this is serious stuff. I tried to get a permit for a billboard, and they're not issuing them. Can't get it. Yet the county almost saturated with signs and billboards from these big corporations. They seem to be able to do it somehow. How are they doing it? Somebody's doing it. And I've heard the arguments, well, they're ugly, they're ugly. Well, the person that brought that argument up might be ugly himself, but we're not trying to get rid of him. If that were the criteria for whether a business needs to be approved or permitted to be legal in the county, then we got problems. Because every day we get behind trucks, sewer trucks, garbage trucks, mail trucks. Some of it is downright dangerous, but we don't exempt them, we don't ban them. In fact, you try to go a week without the garbage truck coming to your house, you'll be raising holy hell. We need these things, okay? The billboards are a form of advertising that is necessary. It affects a lot of people in a negative way when they're not permitted. I mean, the small businesses is one of them. But the county is gonna profit from them too. You're gonna get revenue from them. The permits, the taxes, there's a lot of things that are going on there. The people that are working the billboards and the signs, the businesses that advertise are gonna generate business for their own business. This is local businesses. This is helping the county grow. The more those businesses make, the more taxes are gonna be available for different things. If you think about it, I mean, it's really a win-win to get this thing reversed. And I just want to ask you to reconsider and look at this another time and think about all the lives that are being affected in a negative way. And then on the other hand, if it was reversed, how that it can be affected, these lives and the county in a positive way, and possibly even generate more income, more revenue for the county. They're not gonna, I mean, they're not, the resources and the research for the danger of the billboards, the accidents, I mean, it's minimal. It's not, that's a moot point right there, unless you got a tornado or something, but that's, I mean, So anyway, with that said, I'd like to thank you again for giving me this time again to bring this up, and I hope that you'll look at this and think about the ramifications overall. It affects a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all. Next, we have council member comment. Mr. Miles?
I'd like to address Mr. Mann. My main question is, what is your and the Republican Party's main and true objective in wanting to conduct a town hall with the county council members? That's the first question. Second question is, why is it that only the Oconee County Republican Party is interested in conducting this town hall? The Democratic Party apparently has not shown any. So I don't know what your objective in conducting this is, if you can explain that.
Make a motion to allow, if that's a direct question toward a citizen.
Sir?
If you asked a question, I said I'll make a motion to allow.
I'd like to
Second, I need a second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
I appreciate your question. The objective, I believe Luke spoke to earlier, was really transparency and understanding for our citizens. Because there were a lot of questions that were brought up tonight about the budget and the budgeting process. Where is the money being spent? Chairman Durham ran a video recently to try and explain that. There's still questions. So from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we all agree that we want to minimize taxes and expenditures The process by which we do that has been more confusing to the general public this time around than ever before. That's what's prompted the question to get answered. The second question you have with regards to the Democrats. The Democrats, it's an open town hall. The Democrats are interested in coming. So just because you haven't heard about it doesn't mean that they're not planning to attend. So it's a public forum. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, whoever is welcome to come and submit questions for answers. So it's not limited to just the Oconee County Republican Party. Questions within the county are coming from all different directions and all different political affiliations.
Thank you.
So do you have a consensus of all Republican Party members that that's what they want, or is it just a select group?
Select group.
As in your officers?
The officers in the county party?
Yeah.
The officers in the county party is unanimous. As far as the executive committee, which represents the 31 precincts in the county, it was a supermajority vote to call and then make the invitation to county council for town hall. So while there are certain precincts that did not vote for it, they represent a very minority of the precinct executive committeemen or the precinct officers.
So if we agree to do this, how are you gonna get the information out to everybody where everybody's gonna be satisfied? This budget is a very complicated piece of work. So are you gonna be able, if we do this, are you satisfied with the answers you get, that everybody be satisfied and go away?
That don't ever go away, Don.
I think to try and answer your question, we've got to have it first, and the questions be submitted, and hopefully both sides will gain a better understanding of the process and the numbers and the why behind what's there. Do I think it would be beneficial to the population in the county? Absolutely. Because if nothing else, it represents an exchange between the council and the general population in a venue other than what we have here, which is limited.
Do we have any, has this ever been done before?
Can I speak to that? So there's been multiple times that council has been in public places together. I think y'all recently just traveled down to Charleston, and there were several public places that y'all were into. And I think when we first got on, let's just take for example, next year, you'll have 3 council members that are current council members. Let's just say we all decide to run again. So you will have a sitting majority at every single debate that is put on. Every single debate. So some of those are put on by, actually what's interesting about it is the majority of debates are put on by, they won't state this, but it's Democrats. So I appreciate the change in that. So there's been multitude of meetings that I've been involved in through the time, Republican meetings that they've had somebody that a council majority has been there. So, and I think Mr. Reed made that a lot clearer before he was here. In my personal opinion, there was some stuff that went on that wasn't always advertised publicly. But I've been to, I can't tell you how many business ribbon cuttings and things like that the majority of council was there. Sometimes all the council's there. So we don't sit around and vote, but those are advertised publicly. But, you know, when Baxter opened up, the majority of council was there. So Borg Warner, I believe, I know, yeah, council majority, there was at least 3 of us there, if not 4 of us there. So not being in the general public or not being able to be together, is not really, I mean, y'all sit up here before a meeting and sometimes there's 3 or 4. There's just limitations to what you're allowed to do. And I think Mr. Root does a very, very good job of sometimes correcting, even me, of the look of impropriety when you got 3 people standing up here and you're just talking about whatever, whether it's a health issue or something like that. So, you know, as long as it's public, I understand where you're coming from, because I've been to debates and I've also been to the one precinct meeting that I was invited to that happened, and went to that meeting and spoke to that meeting, and it was probably on the other side of, you know, what it was, and it was okay. We had a good conversation. It allowed open dialogue. I think I was the only council member there, right? McMahon was the chairman at that time. Mr. Perry Smith invited me to that meeting I came to. So, I mean, it's a, you know, you don't have to go to any of this stuff. It's just like at debates. There's debates that I wasn't able to go to because of commitments. But again, going into next year, if all 3 of us decide to run, we'll be sitting doing the same thing in debates. So it's not illegal, but it just has to be advertised publicly. It's not a council meeting, so.
I understand the rules.
Yeah.
About majority.
Will people be happy? No.
Do you have any more questions for Mr. Mann?
I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
Thank you.
Mr. Rich, you had something in regards to what I said.
Yeah, I just gave my,
Give a
not a
clarification.
grimace, but I think it would be a council meeting, a special council meeting, because it's being convened to discuss specifically the budget. But what you said is accurate. As long as it's done as a public meeting, advertised, everyone's allowed to come, an agenda's put out and some minutes, even if they're cursory minutes are done, then it can take place. We did that with Clemson when we went over to a Clemson meeting. I know we've had some town hall meetings, but I think they've all been here at least, since I've been here.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you, Mr. Root. We would be a quorum, and personally, I don't have any intentions of attending unless I'm forced to.
Any other comments? Okay, the gentleman certainly spoke about Chaga Valley Road. Is y'all still here? Be on the roads committee. Place that on the next agenda and look.
We'll look into it before the next agenda.
Okay. All right, so we'll start looking into taking action.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Was it Mr. Bennett, Mark? I didn't catch the last name. Did he leave? The billboards.
Art Pettit.
I don't,
Mr. Pettit.
Pettit.
He did get up and leave.
He's right there.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's back there, he just moved.
I don't know why the ordinance came about. It was before I was on council. I don't know, maybe Mr. Davis or Mr. Elliott, was you on during that time? I mean, was the public coming up wanting the moratorium or?
Yeah, I was gonna address it when I get to there. I'll address that question. If you want me to address it now, I will.
That's fine.
Yeah, so it was brought up by councilmen, and I guess the number one thing was about the lack of permits on that. So when the research was done, I think at that time, there was 7 years without permits. So from my understanding, there hadn't been any building of billboards, repair of billboards is permitted, things like that. So when that was brought forth, it was something that wasn't utilized. So that's why, I guess, from my understanding, I don't remember what the exact vote on that was. There was actually a lot of public that was for that billboard ban. You know, I run a small business. I've used billboards before, so I'm not completely against billboards. I don't like 20 of them stacked in a row. And I think that's where some of the pushback came from, the citizens. I think one company at one point in time pulled like 14, and they were all issued in a row. So, interesting thing about those is all of those are actually still to this day full. So they obviously put them in the right place. So there were several that had no advertising on it and things like that. So I guess from a general consensus throughout there wasn't a lot of pushback. I think Mr. Hart voted against that, if I remember properly. It's not I'm not completely against billboards. I think the whole factor of, is it a safety concern? There's a whole lot more issues out there than, cars wrecking because of billboards. I don't exactly agree with that statement. I think that was made, not necessarily by a council person, but, when we go through these sign things, and I actually, if y'all look on the agenda, there was some discussion on that. I actually, sent a message to Mr. Chairman that we needed to talk, and it wasn't just directed at billboards, it was other types of signage. So, when the billboard stuff goes down, I had sign companies call me and appreciated that because the on-premises signs improved. I think, you have a sign company as well, so, I'm not sure how that worked out, but I think there's some talk that I was trying to address in the sign ordinance in regards, not necessarily to your business. I don't know exactly all the signs that you create, but specific signage that, due to technology, the cost of that signage has come down. So I'll talk about that later tonight. That was the reason for the ban on that. I don't know if we keep track of if somebody's applied for a billboard, and it didn't meet. Ms. Brock, do we keep track of that?
I'm sorry.
If somebody calls in
I was looking
for,
on
no,
the
you're
date
fine.
for the sign
Just somebody
ordinance.
call, it was in 2020.
The lighted scrolled and billboard,
The billboard ban was in 2020.
I
So-
believe that was related to design standard discussion and creation of visual highways.
Right. And it wasn't a complete billboard ban. We had a lot of, 85 was exempt from that. There were several other places that were exempt from that. So we actually, there's a lot of effort put into it to not do a total ban on it, but ban in certain areas. And honestly, from the general public, we got, I've gotten 5 or 6 emails here recently telling us don't lift the ban for billboards. Again, there's some things that we need to address, and I agree with you on that. But I don't know we have permitted billboards. I highly doubt that we have. I think we've permitted construction on existing billboards. But I think recently in zoning appeals, there was talk of removing 3 or 4 billboards. So maybe there's a point where we say, we allow so many billboards in Oconee County, so if we lose 3, we can put 3 up. I don't know. I'm just talking, but just a thought. But I think that's why it was. It was 7 or 8 years, 0 permits applied for, and the billboard was open. And that would have been a span of 2012, 2013 to 2020. So that's where it came from, Mr. Durham.
There were good many abandoned billboards at that time, too.
We had some construction issues we were trying to address too.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
Just on billboards or other stuff?
Anything?
Yeah, I think Chaga Valley Group had left, but, I was actually up there. As Oconee County continues to have a whole lot more tourism, there's certain roads that, there's very limited access to certain things. The Chaga River's one of them. Chaga Valley gives us a lot of good access down through there, so not saying that we have a lot of rescues on the Chaga, but as somebody that tubes down it, it's not a crazy river, but somebody breaks an ankle, it is extremely hard to extract somebody when you don't have a road that gets to them. So just a thought process as we move forward with that. Do I think Chaga Valley needs to be paved? No, there's probably some places in it that it would do good to pave. Otherwise, you're just gonna sit there and try to have some washouts in there. So I think certain places we've paved hills and stuff to, that has helped out. Mr. Moore, you brought up building inspections. I was on council, Mr. Hart was on council when there was discussion on eliminating the building inspectors. And I know several of y'all that are in here that have built for a while. I don't know if y'all were at that meeting, but it was quite interesting. We got a lot of conversation out, and it was actually, the thought process behind elimination of it was to actually give a better timeline of inspections. So we were going completely third party. And when that happened, I think every builder finished up at 3:00 to be here and make sure that, which was good. That's what we really want. So to say, do not eliminate our building codes, improve. And we spent a lot of time improving. And for those 3 or 4 years after that, I got nothing but praise for our building guys and have done a phenomenal job. I heard stories of having two-wheel drive cars stuck and how many of y'all had to pull two-wheel drive out. I think every single one of our buildings, Ms. Brock's done a good job making sure they all have four-wheel drive vehicles getting in and out of job sites. The third-party group that we put on there now that anybody can use at any given time, even they do a lot of commercial stuff too, was to help improve that. But the pay needs to go up more, so we keep these guys because we train them and they walk down the road and make $15,000 more. And we're overworking them. These guys are out at 6 in the morning and they're still out at 7 and 8 o'clock at night still doing that. I'm sure they're probably still out doing that. So I'm gracious for those that have stuck with us. But even if we hire a new guy, we have to, usually they're paired with somebody for a certain period of time. So it doesn't necessarily improve anything for probably about 4 or 5 months. That process of training, I think, is a year and a half before they're on their own.
Oh, they're not on their own for a couple of years.
Yeah, so when you talk about a problem, you're talking about something that if you don't address it now, the longer it gets from pay and different things like that, the harder it is to address. So, and and building code is not in our hiring freeze that's out there now, is it?
It was lifted.
Okay, so thank you for y'all lifting that. But the pay has got to go up. And you're right. I think you said something about the buildings. And when you look at the amount in our budget of the growth of that, and we're not adding more people to that and increasing that pay, that's where it should come from. Because it's a tax, a fee is a tax, same thing, but it's not. The increased taxes coming from these homes should definitely put that on there. And I know Ms. Brock has fought for that for years. We had that. I'm not exactly sure how that appeared in this current budget because I'm still trying to exactly figure everything out in there. In the original budget, it did have a lot of increases for building codes as well, some addition to that. Where did we end out on building inspectors in this budget?
Currently, we have 3 vacancies out of a department of 8. 2 building inspectors and 1 certified building official, which is the CBO. We are currently using Mr. Brian Blackwell, who is contract third party for CBO.
Yeah, so it's an issue. It's an issue, and the only way to address it is by paying them the correct wages. Because everybody else is. I guarantee you Clemson is.
Am I allowed to say a word?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Bruce, second.
I'll give you one more minute. You have to come forward.
Okay. So again, I'm Randy Moore, for the record. I was not at the meeting. I did hear about that, third party. I would like to say on behalf of every builder I know that third-party inspections could possibly be fine, but we have no intention of paying for the inspections twice. So that would mean to us, we deduct the fees from the building permit to use for the inspections, if there's any thought of that in the future. We don't want our building department to go away, though. We appreciate the county. Thank you.
And I think the general consensus is that it's headed in the right way. It just kind of got sidetracked. So I think, I hope council's definitely listening to builders out there, because 2 weeks, it's not thousands, it's millions, especially in that last group of raises. So hopefully the interest will come down.
Ms. Brock, can you address the pay issue? And also, I'll just let you address that, then I'll ask you my next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council, and Mr. Moore. Thank you for your kind words for the 3 inspectors we have diligently, boots on the ground, wheels in the mud, lungs in the dust. They really are trying their best, and if there was any way that we could go out, snap our fingers, and magically make 3 or 4 more inspectors appear, believe you me, sir, just for you and all the other builders who are being very patient through this trying process with us, we would most certainly snap those fingers. I did meet with a group of builders. I don't want to say their names on the record. I did not get their permission to discuss their names or their positions, but I did meet recently with a group of builders. And one of the options, while we continuously search for current certified inspectors, so I don't want to take up a whole lot of time with this, but it's a little more complicated. As my mom used to say, all the simple problems have already been fixed, so we're left with the really complicated ones. So the complicated part about the building inspectors is they all have to be certified in certain skills and trades within their provisional or their licensing. So there may be 4 steps involved, say residential mechanical, residential plumbing, residential general. So they'll have to get each one of those things completed before they can move on to the next thing. So it's like a cumulative process of consistent training and learning. Our building inspectors at this time are working on average 10 to 15 hours of overtime as daylight persists. I'll have to call them sometimes, and they're not here tonight probably because they're out doing inspections, and tell them to go home because it's not a sustainable practice for them to continuously work that number of overtime. To address that quickly, just a quick overview. I do get reports from staff from every single week. Last week alone, the 3 staff members performed, and this is no third party included, 178 inspections, 1,429 inspections since July 1. That is on the backs of 3 people. So we are enormously thankful for the commitment that our staff has provided. Last week, there were 73 new permits issued since Monday through Friday of last week, and 625 since July 1. Now, these numbers may just seem like data, but these are boots on the ground positions where the inspectors have to go out and perform like inspections of footings, which means they may have to measure, do compactions. Some house may be 1,200 square feet, an additional home in a different part of the county may be 7,000 square feet, so the time for each inspection may vary. As to the amended budget, council will consider this evening for second reading an additional $480-some-odd to address immediate staffing needs, and the building codes division is in within that immediate need. Again, I really appreciate your kindness. It's not typical to have this kind of support when we are not able to provide the service of expectation.
And the building permit funds question.
So building permit funds are just like any other funds collected in the county, specifically because building codes is not an enterprise fund, so the funds collected specifically by that department are not statutorily required to be used specifically and only for that department. So fees coming into that department, revenues coming in that department may be put into the county coffer and utilized for other things. Now, as the anticipated revenues come in for building codes, I don't wanna say it's a lack of money. I think it's been a lack over the last couple of years of us being competitive in our pay and wages, specifically for inspectors, because there is such high demand because the certification process is so long. And once someone becomes certified, they're extremely attractive, just like a law enforcement officer or a certified firefighter would be for outside agencies to come snatch up that experience.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to add to what Ms. Brock was saying, so it's not confusing, the building codes doesn't have a separate fund like the Rock Quarry has an enterprise fund.
Oh, thank you.
But the money may go to the general fund, but the fees, as with all the fees, are set to pay for the cost of the service to those who receive the benefit of it. So that's how they come up with their fees, and that's how they're driving, that's how they're used.
I could be allowed one more sentence or two.
Come to the microphone, please. Come to the microphone.
So guys, I appreciate the conversation about this so much. It's helpful to me to understand, and even what you just said. So you did answer clearly my question. When we pay the whatever thousands of dollars it is for that building permit, we know now that it's not staying in a building permit budget for inspections. It's, I'm gonna use, for lack of a better word, pooled money with other monies. You touched on something very important, the certifications, and it's not everybody that's certified, but if the council would consider, we could have different offers. When I'm hiring a man, are you a beginner or are you a journeyman? And there's a lot of places between. The pay scale can be reflective of where we bring them in, but that man with the certifications, we want him. Oconee County needs him, and they need him really bad, and we need to pay the dollar to get him. But that man that's willing, he's gonna come and do it, he's gonna get certified. He can get there, but he's gonna do the same thing I've done and all the other builders in the county have done, and he's gonna have to work his way up to that. So there's an intermediate level, but at the same time, it's gotta be reflective of where he's going. When the pay's close enough that it's debatable whether he's gonna make more starting out here or at McDonald's, that's too close for somebody that we're considering. And I'm not being disrespectful, please understand, I'm trying to be realist. When it's close enough to be debatable, and McDonald's pays pretty good now to some of their employees, that should be an eye-opener to us. It's an eye-opener to me as a builder. I pay men, I don't have a man ever do nothing for me that gets under $20 an hour. Now, you guys can do what you want. Some people wouldn't ever say that. If he's gonna come rake my leaves, he's getting $20 an hour. It costs money to live in the world today. But that's not reflective even of any expectations I have. It's being real about where we need to start that man that's willing, has some experience, we can get him certified. And the man that is certified, can we pay him and get him here right now? And the ones we have certified, I do understand, and all the builders understand, it's not a quick fix, it's a process. But we want to begin that process, and thank you for explaining that there's money being put there to begin that. But our expectations are high, our hopes are high, and again, we appreciate you guys, and I'll be quiet now. I think I've said all I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I did want to touch on one thing. So in the budget, it's 31 and 95. You can look at it up and back up page 31 and 95. Make a note of that. So if you look at that budget on there, in 2020, we had 7 full-time employees. Here we are in 2024, we have 7 full-time employees. You heard the numbers said there. We've talked about increasing that. We're down 3 staff members. That's part of it. That takes your 2 week down to maybe a week, okay? Second part of it is pay. So our budget last year, salary and wages, was $382,916. The 2022 actual number was $331,684. This year's budget and salary and wages for building code, you think it went up? It went down, $355,555. So you talk about revenue is well over $1,600,000. If I read this right, it's on that page. So after we pay everything to building codes, $1,600,000 goes back into there. Now, the only thing, there's other parts. It's not building stuff and inspections. That's not the only cost of building. There's a whole lot of other stuff, roads and things like that. So I don't want people to say, oh, we got $1,600,000 we need to pay. But we've talked about this for years. Mr. Elliott sat on that with me when we went through the budgeting process because it is an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue until we address it. It needs to be full staffed. The pay needs to go up and continue to go up. But I saw this about two weeks ago. Again, I'm looking forward. I'm going to vote for the budget, but there's a lot of things in here, and that was one of them that I'm sitting there going, the revenue's going up and the pay is going down and the time serving's going down. So if you come back up, you have to come work for the county, so don't come back up. So.
Is there one of you though that could just state what was brought in, checks brought in just for permitting?
It's on page 31 of 95. Building codes, last year, 1.5 million. Building codes, mobile home fees, 20,000. Building codes, plan review fees, 175,000. There's three other ones on there. Total department revenue, 1.737. This year, 2.254 is the proposed.
And we have a 350-something thousand budget.
Yeah.
So the budget that he's speaking of is salary payroll budget, and Ms. Brock can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but we have some $400,000 in the budget for pay increases, and the way Ms. Brock does that is she places it through the first two readings and the administrator line item part of the budget, and by the third reading, it goes out to each departmental fund. Also, as you can see, last year we budgeted, $382,000, but actual was $331,000. Well, that's because of vacancies, right? So your budget is not spent. And I imagine part of that number before the pay raises is in is calculating and expecting that, here we are in September and we still have vacancies and they're not going to be filled, unfortunately, overnight.
Well, some of those were involved in the hiring freeze for a couple, but they were before the hiring freeze, but they were part of that hiring freeze that was put on. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I can't let this pass. Mr. Luke Moore and Mr. Mann and ever who else is wanting to do this, and I don't know where Mr. Mann's involved in this, but Mr. Moore's up here stating that he had emailed Matthew 3 times and he hadn't answered. Have any of you looked on Facebook and seen what this man has written about him, and he wants him to answer his emails? I wouldn't answer it, and I don't think any of you would. And he's a friend of mine, and I like the job he's doing. And I'm going to stick up for him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. As far as the town hall, nobody reached out to me, opened up communication, hey, we would like to do this. I think I heard about it in WGOG first. I called Mr. Root. I said, Mr. Root, have you heard anything about this? He said, no, nobody's reached out to me. I said, well, what does that look like? And, it doesn't matter if you call it a town hall or ice cream social. If you have the group together, not randomly at a convention, and you're discussing items that the council has jurisdiction over, that's a quorum, and there's certain requirements that have to be met. And Mr. Root was kind enough to send me a Attorney General's opinion, which I later forwarded to you after I did receive an email from someone. Then it goes on, and I heard from Executive Committeeman that he spoke with you personally, and that you told him that you cleared it with the county attorney, and that the county attorney said it would not be a quorum, would not be a meeting, and would be no issue. I said, well, I guess he reached out to David. So I called David. I said, Mr. Root. He said, no, nobody from the Republican parties reached out to me. So that was a lie to an executive committeeman. And then in the meeting where y'all voted to have the town hall, I read the transcript and listened to the recording. And there was talk about having a sign-up list, first come, first served, which is an open meeting. issues there, but maybe if we had communication with the county, it could have been worked out smoother. And then the lady who was leading the meeting, one of the two women's forces, said, well, we cleared this with the county attorney. He said it would not be a quorum, it's no issue. I said, well, I guess they did reach out to David later. Called Mr. Root? No, nobody's reached out to him, so there's another lie. So the executive committee was lied to in order to get the vote. And then with all the other impropriety in it, I said, well, you know what, I'm not putting the county in that jeopardy. But I did offer to come myself with Mr. Elliott, which is what I was told was the original motion. And everybody else is free to go as you want to not form a quorum. As far as 3 readings on a budget, well, that's when we have 3 readings. That's when we have a public hearing prior to the 3rd reading. And the public stood up here and spoke, and they gave their wishes. And so what we did was we pretty much held the line because we have to pass a budget by July 1st. We listened to the public, and then we had to pass a budget by July 1st, and we took the time to execute it and to get it correctly. Mr. Moore, as far as the gas tax goes, we've talked about this before, Ms. Brock. It's the only way we can get the numbers of the gas tax collected in this county, gas and diesel, versus the revenue that's spent in this county.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of council, Mr. Moore, your estimation of 250,000 roughly plus or minus per mile for paving is correct, but for creation or building, constructing a road, including the necessary easements for potential future infrastructure is roughly $1 million a mile. So a portion of the gas tax funds collected on behalf of the county by the state of South Carolina are allocated to each county C-Fund committee. That C-Fund committee does meet monthly here at Oconee County Administrative Building, and those meetings are open to the public. The C-Fund committee typically receives, I think it's 20% of a certain percentage of allocation, and that C-Fund committee hears and requests from municipalities, the state, and of course from us, the county, and are awesome to work with as far as any needs for the county. We have just off the top of my head utilized C-Fund money for the road construction project. This is not the state portion, but for county economic development, they'll dog ear or earmark specific amounts or percentages of funding. But we did the roadway infrastructure for both Golden Corner, Commerce Park, Seneca Rail site, and for Heritage Farm, which is where the farm center is now. The important thing about Heritage Farm is that one came in really above the anticipated budget because of a significant, I don't know the piece of communication infrastructure, but it was a large piece of telecommunication infrastructure that had to be completely relocated. So we do have an asset there, and as to whether we could take the money, a portion of that gas tax money is utilized for state roads within the county of collection. So that state funding can be used with that C-Fund money or with this gas tax money as well. There might be a little bit of gray area there, but I don't want to sound greedy, but the more money the merrier for road projects.
So does the Transportation Committee, which I think Mr. Hart chairs, do they interface with the C-Funds Committee?
Not typically. I have not had that experience, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Hart has been informed of the county's request going in front of the C-Fund committee, and Mr. Hart, I mentioned you by name because you've been chairman for several terms of the Transportation Committee. They're aware of it. We don't ask anybody to attend. We have plenty of staff to fill up the room, so to speak, and the state usually has 3 people there. If the municipalities have a request on there, that municipal person may come, but we do meet in the conference room, and it can be tight as squeeze.
And I have attended that meeting, and I
Yes.
think somebody from the Transportation Committee should be there every time.
Mr. Hart is welcome to join us every meeting.
And Mr. Luke Moore, you talked about $91 million. So this is what I've talked about for years, is if you look at our overall budget compared to other counties. But if you look at it, you have different funds. Part of that $91 million, just a quick glance. If you would like, Ms. Brock and Ms. Price, they have sat down with citizens before, and I'm sure they would love to sit down and explain it to you. As one of my colleagues to the left here said, budgets are complex. But like one thing here is, where we have, in the Economic Development Fund, we have $2.5 million coming in as grants from the SE Power Team and Department of Commerce. That's captured in that $91 million. And when you have a general fund operating budget, Mr. Elliott commented on some, you can roll over unspent budgeted money into your rainy day fund, but you can't budget for it. So we can't sit here and say, hey, we foresee this issue coming up in the future, let's budget for $800,000. But if you have payroll budgeted and you have vacancies and that's short $800,000, that money will roll into the fund balance. Is that in the most transparent way? Probably not. But with the other funds, you can accrue a balance, which is, like you talk about the $91 million. I mean, right here, we're budgeting. This is one fund. Ms. Brock, be glad to go through it all with you. Capital Request Fund, that's a new fund. It has in here unforeseen emergency, $647,000. So we're able to legally budget for that and set that money aside. As far as emails, Luke, you've sent me 3 emails. Not a single one had anything to do with the budget or county business. And Luke and Jennifer, both of you, I don't know what your fixation is with me and my family. And everyone in this life goes through deep personal pain. There's not a one of us that's immune from it. And I also don't understand what would motivate a man to continue to attack a family who has healed and moved on. I don't know what motivates you to do that. And the attacks are not just on Kate and myself, they're also attacks on her children. But Luke, I want you to understand something. I love you, and I forgive you, and I pray for you every day. There's not a single thing you can do to change that. Thank you. Any other comments?
I do have a comment, but this is from Ms. Brock. And it gets back to the inspectors. Have we explored partnering with surrounding counties to contract some of them?
Yes, I have.
I mean, if they have a surplus, because I don't have the data to say how many Anderson County has or how many Greenville County has. I know they're all busy. I mean, growth is rampant. But have we explored that?
I have spoken, Mr. Mize, and the rest of members of council with municipalities and with our neighboring counties. There aren't any certified inspectors to spare. I don't know that, so we recently lost 2 inspectors to other counties. They're not interested in coming back to Oconee County for lesser pay, even if they're just coming as contracts to help, because they, in their minds, we had the opportunity to pay them while they were here, and here we are offering a contract price after they've gone. So there are some hard feelings, so to speak, just to be blunt about that. And typically, I don't know that our need allows us to be able to share. We need full-time employees. We desperately need full-time employees.
I'm aware of that, but I'm looking for ways, a stopgap, till we can get some hired.
Hey, our partnership with other counties is trying to tell them not to steal our building guys, because that's Clemson is taking, every time we got one train, they were taking them $10,000-$15,000 more. They didn't care because they had to have them. And where'd they make it up? Those revenue numbers. The revenue's there to pay them more and to pay them the right wage, because we're overworking them like crazy right now. And they're making good money because of overtime, not because of base pay. So we've been trying to correct that for years, as well as trying to hire more. Definitely the wage study, whenever it happens, it'll show we're probably $20,000 less than what we should be for a true building inspector.
Ms. Brock, have we ever targeted this group before with pay raises? Say, hey, we set aside this extra money for this group?
In the past, Mr. Chairman, members of council, no, we don't target one department specifically, other than very recently, law enforcement and fire, because we're hemorrhaging employees. So the loss of employees in building codes hasn't been quote unquote a hemorrhage because we've been short for a period of time. I think we just happened to hit the shortage of staff at the incredible increase in building permits at the sweet spot, so to speak, and we've hit critical mass. We have a record number of building permits and a record number of inspections. And in the past, Oconee County's geography is vast. So with 3 inspectors, as you can imagine, you could be driving 300 miles per day, zigzagging back and forth, because not everyone is certified in every skill. And I do want to address one thing Mr. Moore said. So we do have time, so to speak, to train, but that your provisional license the day you get hired is good for 1 calendar year. If you do not pass any sort of certification, any portion step, it is gone and you are done. So there is a timeline. So I might have someone that is very robust, but they aren't capable of staying on as an inspector because their provisional license is only good for 365 days. Yes.
And this budget is going to address, this amended budget, some of those pay issues.
It will address some of the pay issues, some of this, the amount of funds that was allocated to us to address salary deficiencies. A lot of that was just to address the departments that are in hemorrhage. And we did the overtime study. We brought this to council when the hiring freeze was put on. And at that time, of course, it was imminent, but at this time, it is crucial. And timing is everything. I certainly don't want the market to change in any way, so I hesitate to say that. But 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, when COVID first hit, there was so much uncertainty. We weren't looking at the number of building permits that we are now. But I think as time changes, there's more interest in Oconee County. There are more second homes in Oconee County. There's more residential structures in Oconee County. There's enormous residential multifamily structures coming to Oconee County. And all of those things just kind of snowballed into the requirements of the department. So yes, this will address it, but it might not quote unquote fix it because we are waiting on results from a staff and wage and time and use study.
Thank you, Ms. Burl.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I didn't mean to run off on the building code stuff, so I think we beat that one down pretty good, but just, I wanted to touch base a little bit. Maybe council, from Mr. Root, we're talking about 3 members of council being a quorum. I know I've been through pretty much every class that there is. I know Mr. Hart has been through. I know Mr. Mize is going to several of them. Mr. Elliott has, and I think Mr. Durham's going through several of them now. Talks about what we're allowed to do and not do. So when and I know it was in the news today, so we'll talk about it. So I know Mr. Cruz is here. So as we address this, so are we stating that at no time, 3 members of council, I know all 3 of y'all are members of that group, and that's great. Y'all are never in a meeting together with that group?
What are you talking about?
Your conservative group. So if will y'all attend meetings, what we're allowed to do? No, I'm not, this is not defensive. Don't get defensive on it.
You're making assumptions, Julian.
Well, if I was a member of a group, I would go to the meetings. What I'm saying is, so.
Assumptions.
No, I'm not making assumptions. I'm stating as council, it's probably good that we all have clarification of if we go, because if there's a Republican Party meeting, I'm probably going to be there. John's going to be there. Maybe one of you will be there. Maybe you'll all be there, which is fine. But I'm not making assumptions because I would assume.
There you go. There you go.
It is an assumption. You want them there at the meetings, which is good. You should want them. So,
No, hang on, no, let's don't.
So what I'm stating is from an attorney standpoint, when you have a meeting like that, y'all are all 3 members of that group, and that's fine. That's great. No problem with that. We're free to go wherever we want to go, right? Straight. Nobody's forcing anybody. So if y'all attend a meeting and you're all 3 there, is it a quorum or is it not a quorum?
I have never attended or been together with these other 2 gentlemen in any circumstance since we've all been seated in office just to avoid the appearance of any impropriety. But also, the guidelines state, we all may 5 show up at a church cookout together. But that's happenstance. We don't go around talking about together county business. You don't have to have votes, but you have to, if you're all together and you discuss an area that the county has priority over, well, then that's a quorum, meets open meeting laws. We've never three been together, period, let alone together to discuss. So I don't know why you're trying to make assumptions, but yes,
I'm
it is
not, no, I'm talking
assumption.
about in general.
In general.
From moving forward. And I think be very cautious with those statements because we all are at public places together.
Mr. Root, could you please say if all 5 of us show up somewhere, the difference between that versus a forum where we're all discussing a county issue versus a happenstance encounter at Mountain Mocha, say?
So first, the nomenclature, the wording that we're using, I think may get some people confused. A quorum is a quorum, period. If there are 3 of you all together in a place, regardless of what you're doing, that's a quorum of county council. The problem becomes, and it's clear in the law, if you discuss or take action about a matter over which county council has specific jurisdiction, we'll say. So quorum together, y'all are talking about baseball, fine. Does it look or could it look odd? Yeah, and I would always advise, in a situation like this, stay separate if you're not in the meeting part of it, because you have a quorum present. But when it becomes a public meeting is when you start discussing or taking action on something that council has jurisdiction over. The Attorney General's opinions have been clear on it, FOIA is clear on it. That you have to treat it like a public meeting, so everyone has an opportunity to be there, hear, and be heard. If the meeting calls for that, there's an agenda, it's noticed, and there's minutes. So it's not a high hurdle to jump over to make it happen, but if a quorum is gonna be there to discuss, a matter of which county council has specific jurisdiction, meaning Oconee County's budget ordinance, then it's gonna be a quorum at a public meeting, it has to be treated as such. When you're at SCAC or things like that, well, there's been general opinions that said, that's okay, so you got that covering, but those are discussions about general counties, not the right phraseology, but county business within the state. So we're getting education, you're talking about, now, if 3 of y'all went over, just even if it's a chance or not, but went over into the corner and started talking about Oconee County business, then I would not do that. That's something that you absolutely have to, should avoid. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Mr. Root.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we have a lot of important business to do tonight. Can we move the meeting forward, please?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item is public hearing for the following ordinances. Ordinance 2023-13, an ordinance authorizing the insurance of general obligation bonds in one or more series, tax exempt or taxable, in an amount not to exceed $25 million for the purpose of designing, acquiring, constructing, installing, equipping, or rehabilitating various capital projects, including wastewater improvements and related equipment, authorizing the county administrator to prescribe the form and details of the bonds, providing for the payment of the bonds and the disposition of the proceeds of the bonds, providing for borrowing and anticipation of the insurance of the bonds and other related matters. This public hearing, has anyone time to speak?
Mr. Moore?
And public hearing is unlimited time.
Unlimited for time, thank you. I'd like to say a couple of thank yous first. Number one, thank you that you're gonna sit down with me and go over this budget. I appreciate that. I know you got a full schedule, you done been over it 5 times for the council. And no telling who else,
Welcome.
so thank you. Now, I do believe that exactly what you said a while ago was 100% genuine. I do believe it was a chance to make a public spectacle, which is fine.
Are you gonna
But if you
speak
do
about
love
the
me,
bonding?
if you do love me, yes, I am. And if you do love me, we will have a conversation, ask me. So, I appreciate all the prayers I can get because I definitely need them, because I get pretty riled up. Now, I am pretty riled up right now, but I'm gonna stay respectful. There's not been much disrespect as much as some of the things that was said here a while ago. Now, you are my representative, Mr. Mize. You want the people to just go away. There's $25 million right here. you're saying you cut the budget by 2.5 million now, and then you're saying that when it went up 10 million from 81 to 91, that 2.5 million of that don't count because it's done by a grant or such and such. So what about the other 7.5 million? Budget's still going up. Where's the money coming from? We pay all the bills. We're the taxpayers. We pay the lights that are on in here. We pay the seats for you that you're sitting in. We pay for those computers you're looking at, and we pay for the electricity. We pay for every bit of it through tax dollars. Y'all don't have no money to pay for this stuff that you don't take from us or a grant, which is taxes from other people. To say that we don't want to answer and we just want people to go away, you're my representative. I would like to understand this stuff. So if you're not willing to help the people understand the stuff, then maybe you don't need to be the representatives. That goes for each and every one of you. This is bull crap. People's tired of it. We got money coming in one direction, going out another. We got a $25 million slush fund right here. It does not say what it's for. Where did the number 25 million come from? It's going to be our money that pays it back. Where did the number 25 million come from? What's it going to be applied to? Where are the numbers? Where are the breakdown? I'm going to be paying for it. They're going to be paying for it. Where's our money going? Do not give us this bull crap of we don't need to tell you. We don't need to talk to you. It's none of your business. Because it is. It's our business, every single one of us equally. And if you don't have the respect for your people to do no better than to say you need to just go away, then you don't deserve a seat you're sitting in. And to take advantage of an opportunity just to say something in public to try to make somebody look bad, if they knew half the twisted crap that's going on.
Mr. Moore, please stay.
$25 million. $25 million. They would understand why that $25 million is so hidden. They would understand why there's so much splurge. Because of tactics of individuals that sit here. It's not different from tactics in other areas. You got your group over here. Your vice president sits here and talks trash to no end about me and my wife. And you pretend like it's not y'all. So this $25 million, they come on and they mess with me about. And everything else. $25 million, that's what you want me to talk about. The $25 million is mine as much as it is anybody else's in this county. You are responsible for that money. You are responsible to answer to me along with everybody else for this money. And anybody that disagrees with that don't deserve a seat. You have a chance to be responsible to your people who voted for you and the people who you represent. You don't have to, but I tell you what, you're my representative. If you won't be transparent, then perhaps I should be yours next term. Y'all have a good day.
All I can tell you, go for it.
I will.
Is anyone else signed up? Next, I close public hearing on ordinance 2023-13. I now open public hearing ordinance 2023-16 and ordinance to amend and supplement ordinance 2023-01, which established the budget for Oconee County and provided for the levy of taxes for ordinary county purposes for the Tri-County Technical College Special Revenue Fund, for the Emergency Services Protection Special Revenue Fund, for the Road Maintenance Special Revenue Fund, for the Bridge and Culvert Capital Project Fund, for the Economic Development Capital Project Fund, for the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Capital Projects Fund, for the Debt Services Fund, for the Victim Services Special Revenue Funds, for the Capital Vehicle Equipment Fund, and for the creation of the Fire Emergency Services Capital Vehicle and Capital Equipment Fund, for the Community Health and Community Services Fund, and the General One-Time Capital Fund, all in Oconee County for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, in order to effect supplemental appropriations and other matters related thereto. Is anyone signed up? No one signed up for public hearing. I close public hearing on ordinance 2023-16. Okay, third reading of the following ordinances. Ordinance 2023-13, previously read it, is on your screen. That's the ordinance for the bonding. Is it on the screen yet? It is now. That's the ordinance for authorization, insurance, of general obligation bonds, and one or more serious tax exempt or taxable.
Make a motion.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second, Mr. Miles. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, on council's discussion on the $25 million bond has been mostly an executive session. I was not at the last meeting for some medical stuff, but there was not much discussion that I saw on there. So I just want to clear up some things, and there is only having one person come up and talk about the bonding is clear that the general public does not know what this is going to pertain to and what this is, because unless I'm wrong, is this the largest bond this county's ever passed?
To my knowledge, yes, Mr. Davis.
So this is the largest bond this county's ever passed, okay? So we have bonds that is, that they will sell, obviously, after everything goes through. And after today, if everything goes through, and let's say $25 million comes back, how many readings will we have to issue the bonds?
There will be one reading to issue the bond.
There will be a single reading, no public hearing or anything like that.
The public hearing was this evening.
Correct. So just want to, so it's interesting that we have nobody signed up because there's just not a lot of information on it. So as a council person that doesn't have a lot of information on it, it's interesting that we don't have a lot out there. So number one, and I've been on that side of the fence, Mr. Durham, where people attack me. I had my name on one of you people's thing today, and that's great. I don't have a fake Facebook account, by the way, but thanks for doing that. Y'all the one that said it, not me. But when we're talking about bonding, we don't really have any bonds that are coming off till a period of time. Some of them are special revenue bonds. We have some that are coming off in 2025. So there's a payment that's going to be due on this the following, it'll be in next year's budget, correct?
As far as our anticipation for the closing date goes, yes, sir.
So a payment on a $25 million bond is estimated to be at 1.8 million.
$1.5 million, sir.
So $1.5 million. My question to council is, where's that going to come from? My second is that when you read about it, there's no real knowledge of what we're doing with the money. Okay, it's for, as it reads in the ordinance right now, it's for infrastructure, wastewater, so we're talking about sewer. So sewer south, the remainder of this. It doesn't mean just because we can bond for it that we don't have, I think there was a $16 million bond that was originally going to go through the year before I got on council. And I remember a lot of people being against it because of what it was for. And it didn't go through, it didn't pass. And then we got a $25 million bond, nobody speaking in favor of it. And I mean, Mr. Moore spoke, I guess, I don't know if that was for or against it. I don't really know, or it may just been at you. And so, you know, if that's what it was, it was. Where's the payment going to come from? Is that $1.5 million in next year's bond payment? How's that going to be funded? Is it going to be in growth? Are we going to do the entire $25 million, and what projects are linked to this? We've seen maps of this. How much of this are we going to just have a single reading and go? That's the hard part about it. Executions of bond is stating that a single signature of the council chairman after the vote issues the bonds. Okay, so we have to pay for these bonds for a certain period of years. Okay, regardless as if we get it or not. I'm not against. Hopefully part of this bond gets sewer to exit 4. Needs to happen. Needs to continue to get the sewer out there to exit 2. Agree, it needs to happen. Hopefully it improves to where more people can get on it to the original sewer south that we got that's going to be finished up. Section 20 of this is a little concerning to me. It says the county intends to design, acquire, construct, install, and equip various capital projects, including wastewater improvements, related equipment, and other related personal property provided. However, the county may amend the project description by subsequent resolution of the council, provided the par amount without regard to premium, if any, of the bonds does not exceed 25 million. Is that normally always in a bond rating, or is it only in this one because we don't exactly know what we're doing with the $25 million bond?
Mr. Chairman, is that to me, Mr. Davis? I don't know how customary it is. I'm not bond counsel. I do know that it is a method used to, as the process develops, to refine down what an actual kind of scope of use is going to be. We do have a bond counsel here. If you could probably address how frequent it's used, if you want to, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, Michael Kozlark, I am the county's bond counsel. That is frequently used as a means of allowing council the flexibility to amend its proposed project list. When we were engaged to work on this project, we were basically given the broad overview, Mr. Davis, that you essentially described, which is that this was wastewater and related wastewater type projects. There were a number of projects that were discussed within that general description of wastewater. If council would prefer to have this only amended by ordinance, that language could be stricken at this reading. And then it would require an additional 3 readings in order to amend the project list. The difficulty with that is, as council can appreciate, 3 readings is 3 readings, and the timing that sometimes that creates can be difficult if projects need to move forward more quickly. So it's not something that I would say I include in every bond ordinance, but it is something that I include regularly in bond ordinances unless there's a reason to remove it.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Let's just take for granted that we needed $2 million. Could we bond the $2 million and just, without going to the 25 million? I mean, a portion of it, can we bond?
Yes, sir. This is not to exceed 25 million.
That's what I wanted to understand.
Yes, sir. And as the chairman read in the title, the reason it reflects that it could be in one or more series is precisely for that reason. The county would be giving itself the authority to borrow up to 25 million, but it does not require the county to borrow all of that or all of that at one time. From a cost of execution, however, obviously borrowing $2 million and coming back a year later and borrowing another $2 million and coming back a year later and borrowing another $2 million, you're basically paying everybody to do the same borrowing over and over again. And you're really not receiving any cost savings at that point because you're essentially it's as if you went and borrowed $2 million to build a house and next year you borrow $2 million to renovate it. The likelihood is I would have told you should have borrowed $4 million and built a different house to start with.
Okay.
From a cost perspective. We also don't know what interest rates will do. They may go down, they may go up. So you do run the risk that if the county really does need, for whatever the list of projects ultimately is, to build out those projects, then it probably makes sense, depending on how quickly those projects are going to be built, to borrow as much as the county needs rather than doing that same thing every year or every 6 months or every 18 months.
In other words, we need a crystal ball to be looking at.
Which is why we put a not to exceed amount, and then the policymakers get to decide how much to actually borrow.
So the way I like to put things in layman terms, so would it be a fair assessment to say, once this ordinance passed and we go to the street, yes, the terminology is for the bonds, it could be comparable to getting pre-approval for a mortgage?
It's a little more involved than that, but I do like to describe things in terms of mortgages, and I think that is a great way to think about it.
We've not bought the house, but we're seeing what we can buy.
Effectively,
and what rates we may be able to get.
I will say it's a little bit different than that. If the county approves this and gives the administrator the ability to go borrow the money, at that point, if it is put on the street, and I think that is a great way to describe it, if bids are requested from potential investment bankers who would offer to lend the county money, they are going to expect that on the day of that sale, that the county is going to borrow whatever amount it is that we ultimately tell them the county is going to borrow. And if the county were to go through that level of the process, get bids, and then completely walk away from the transaction, that would not be a good thing for the county. That is a negative mark against the county's ability to borrow in the future.
Anybody else have any questions?
Not for,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
so there's not a project that is tied to this. There's not a, company, unless y'all know something I don't know, that is tied to this. So if we're looking at a list of proposed projects, those need to be out there, speculative lines, which I guess is what we're looking at, speculative sewer. Would y'all, anybody agree with that? That's what this is, a speculative sewer. So there's no project tied to that. There's just not a lot of transparency. So my hope is, after this passes tonight, that we have a couple understandings. These projects need to be shown, whatever they are, wherever they're going, so everybody's clear with the council's intentions, okay? Secondly, where's the money come from to pay for this? Just touching base on some of the things with the budget, we got another, if the budget had been funded in June, it looks like another $1 million or so was needed to fund the 13 positions, sheriff's salary increase, and I'll touch on that when we get to there. So we're looking at $1 million there, $1.5 million here, so we got $2.5 million, but we're concerned about the growth in the budget. I just want to be clear, guess what you're going to have next year? Growth in the budget.
Ms. Brock, can you touch on how, if the bonding is issued and the payment's due in 2025, what that looks like?
I'd be happy to. I think Mr. Hart was in the right place when he requested a crystal ball. For next year's budget, I will be carrying one of those with council permission. It would be a nice tool to have. All jokes aside, Mr. Davis, typically I'm not one to have an almost photographic memory. Typically I'm a Kodak moments kind of person, but my almost photographic memory does bring to mind a potential contractual matter related to an economic development investment in the month of April. That agreement was contingent upon there being sewer availability, so to a certain parcel, which for economic development and for the company's benefit, we have not disclosed as of yet. I'm happy to speak to that. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page where that particular one is, because I did say on record that there was a potential economic development matter, and there remains to my knowledge. So next year's budget question, again, no crystal ball. When we look at the county's budget process and the county's fund, especially this year, because this will be the first year that we've created a budget that was a fund budgeting type of budget. So there may be a necessity for us to evaluate those funds, and should there be a fund balance in those funds, bring a recommendation to council to transfer X amount of 0.3 mil, like we did this year, from the PRT capital to the capital vehicle equipment and replacement fund, because of there being some fluctuation what that cost may be. Now, while this will be a set cost, we have every anticipation of working very closely with the auditor to make sure that we kind of equalize out the budget more so than have an up and down objective annually. So an equalized budget so that the taxpayer can anticipate what roughly their taxes are going to be for that upcoming year. And if we keep an equalized budget, we shouldn't have the up and down to up and down, like an increase or decrease, increase, decrease, because it's gonna equalize out, basically in the end anyway.
So, Ms. Brock, when we go to the next step, which is the first and final reading before we do it 100%,
I think there'll be more transparency. I hope there'll be more transparency.
Yes,
At
Mr.
that point
Elliott.
as to where the money's going, right?
So, Brent, is this a good time? How are you? So we also have another partner here with us. This is Mr. Brent Robertson. He is our financial advisor, and I did actually print off a copy just of what the anticipated schedule looks like. So everybody is clear that county passing third reading for the ability to put the bond to the street does not put money in the bank starting tomorrow. So third reading is here, but it doesn't put the money in the bank. It just means the county has the ability to go borrow that money for this period of time at this rate. Brent, if you wouldn't mind, talk about the timeline.
Talk about the schedule?
Yeah.
Sure thing. Chairman, members of council, thank you for your time. Brent Robertson with Stifel Nicholas, y'all's financial advisor. So Ms. Brock is correct that after a third reading, there's still plenty of wood to chop before, if the county were to issue the bonds, before the funds are actually in hand. From a timing standpoint, assuming third reading were to go through tonight, completion of bond documents, anything that would be from a legal standpoint, but also a disclosure item that investors would take a look at, that a lot of that work would start taking place, or would continue to take place, I should say, over the next couple of weeks. We have conversations with the rating agencies. Y'all have 2 ratings, one with Moody's and one with Standard & Poor's. We would seek to get those same ratings applied to these bonds, assuming that they're issued if the county were to go forward with that. That would be late this month, having those conversations with the rating agencies. And again, once the process continues to move forward on finalizing documents and getting ratings, there's a couple things to think about on this. So, and it sounds like there's still some thought as to the timeline for y'all in terms of when to go out and borrow and maybe even how much. So once a rating is obtained, it's like going to Equifax or going to Experian and finding out which credit score is. It's basically the same thing with the county, with getting a credit rating. There's a shelf life on that rating, which makes a lot of sense because the county is going to continue to move forward with budget items, with expenditure items. You're going to get into your next budget come next, February, March timeframe. You're going to start talking about it again. So once you get a rating on a specific bond offering, it's good for a certain period of time. It might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. It really depends on what type of credit you're selling. Also depends on the time of the year and when you've got audited financials coming out. So something to think about is that, yes, we could go forward with the process of talking to the rating agencies, but if the idea is we're going to tap the brakes on this and maybe wait for a year, well, then maybe we don't need to be going to the rating agencies just yet. You need to be going when borrowing is imminent. That's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is, and we were talking about, I think the analogy was getting pre-qualified. So if you ever turn on CNBC or Fox News and you're looking at the stock ticker and how it's constantly moving throughout the day, the stock ticker and the bond market are no different. Bond rates are moving throughout the day. So what would happen in a process of the county selling bonds is an offering document would be drafted by your bond counsel, and the county defines the terms and conditions, all the legal restrictions, all the covenants, the structure. The only thing that's not defined in there is the interest rate. And once you go to market with that, and there's a sale date, and it's a competitive bid process. And once you go to market with that, you get bids in that day. And folks will commit to an interest rate on the bonds. And it is a low bid wins scenario. The important thing to keep in mind is they will hold that rate for that day. You can't sit on it and think about it for a week or two. You can't, well, maybe let's kick it around a little bit and kind of talk about this in a month. They're gone. And that's not something that's limited to Oconee County. That's the bond market. That's a public offering market. So when we go to market, if we go to market, and once we define how much we're borrowing, that's the terms. I mean, we need to know serious that we're ready to go, whether it's $2 million or $25 million. When we go to sale that day, that's how much the county's looking to borrow, because the commitment will only be good for that one day. And Michael's right. You can do, Mr. Kozlarek is right, your bond counsel. There can be multiple bond offerings. You could do $2 million here, you could do $5 million here, you could authorize the full $25 million and do a series of bond offerings. But the economies of scale that Mr. Kozlarek was talking about, you're paying issuance costs, you're paying ratings each time, you're paying for disclosure items, you're paying for legal opinions. you're paying for me. And so there's a drawback to, we love you, we'd love to do a lot of work with you, but there's a certain inefficiency of going and just nicking away at your plan of finance. If you know what you want to build and you've got a good sense of what it's going to cost, it's better to go once when you know what the market is than go back multiple times, incur those additional costs, but then also take the interest rate risk.
Thanks.
Sure. But were the county to continue down the current path, the bonds would price, or scheduled to price in mid-October, and the funds would be in hand beginning of November.
What was the payment schedule on that?
So we've been looking at 20-year scenarios, 25-year scenarios. That's not something that has been determined by the county at this point. I was speaking with y'all's finance director about that earlier this evening. We need to sit down and look at budget and your current debt profile and just see what fits best. But we've looked at multiple structures.
And just a note, Mr. Chairman, Brent saying that reminded me of that, Mr. Robertson, thank you. We're simultaneously working on this ordinance with the budget, so we want to make sure our budget was steady and solid before putting too much out, because if there were budget amendments and there were amendments to the bond, then it's backing up rather than going forward. We wanted to make sure we had a consistent message in all the documentation and the work that is going to be required for the POS documents to be submitted for the rating review.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Is there any more comments? Questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna state one more thing, and then I will be quiet on this one. He stated borrowing is imminent, which is why we're going through this. So, do I think council has intentions of pulling the plug after they go through this? No. Question that was asked was, why wasn't this done before? Did the county not have the ability to bond and do this years ago when they were doing sewer down to 59? Council's always had the ability to bond, as you see on here. We can bond up to $42,979,477. That's the current one. Doesn't mean we should, and obviously doesn't mean that we have the money to pay that. But the only reason the councils before us haven't bonded this amount has been they don't see it necessary for the future of this county. I'm not saying it's not, but we're not doing anything that any council in front of us couldn't have done, because it's just borrowing money. So as we move forward with these projects, let's make sure the payback is in the best scenario of the citizens' money that we're borrowing.
Anybody else? All in favor?
That is 5-0.
Gotta find where I was at. Second reading of the following ordinances. Ordinance 2023-14, an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of addenda to the lease agreements between Oconee County and the Foothills Farmstead, and the Faro Youth Center Incorporated in order to effect the transfer of certain property from the Faro Youth Center lease premises to the Farmstead lease premises and other matters related thereto. Have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
That is 5-0.
Ordinance 2023-15, an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to purchase and sale agreement by and between Oconee County, South Carolina, and Mine America LLC, and other related matters. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
That is 5-0.
I have second reading of ordinance 2023-16, an ordinance to amend and supplement ordinance 2023-01, which established the budget for Oconee County and provided for the levy of taxes for ordinary county purposes for the Tri-County Technical College Special Revenue Fund, for the Emergency Services Protection Special Revenue Fund, for the Road Maintenance Special Revenue Fund, for the Bridge and Culvert Capital Project Fund, for the Economic Development Capital Project Fund, for the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Capital Projects Fund, for the Debt Services Fund, for the Victim Services Special Revenue Funds, for the Capital Vehicle Equipment Fund, and for the creation of the Fire Emergency Services Capital Vehicle Equipment Fund, and the Community Health and Community Services Fund, and the General One-Time Capital Fund, all in Oconee County for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, in order to effect supplemental appropriations and other matters related thereto. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. I want to address as we move into next year's budget process. I know this one was approved late. We're approving half funding for 13 positions. Yes, we may not fill all those positions, but that would add an additional $389,260 to the budget. Sheriff's salary increase, which is 2/3 funding. If that was completely funded, that would be an additional $230,000 there. We have salaries, general increase, 2/3 funding there, which is another $220,000 there. So if we would approve this budget by June of last year, and I understand you wanted to do some more work on it, it actually, there's a lot of good parts to this budget. That budget would be, close to $1 million more than what is in existence now. So as we go into next year, as well as touching base on the bond, there's going to be $1 million more there. Touching base on the general fund, so seems to be that's the focus, and a lot of miscommunication out there on the general fund being the budget. There was a whole thing about the budget being $7 million more. It's not. There was a scale back to where that budget needed to go down. Moving things out of the general fund budget does not change the tax basis. I think it's very wrong to state that the general fund is going down. I mean, we can make the general fund go down to $30 million if we wanted to by removing some of these out. I like the funds. I like the setup of that. That's why we did that a couple of years ago. With certain things, it works really good for current council to make sure money goes where it is. So I'm gracious to see that. I think that's a good setup, Mr. Durham. I think you spoke about that, and that's good to continue to add into those funds. I like a lot of different things that was done in there to make sure that there's money for projects, especially as we move forward with these bond projects, that we have these things set aside. But I just wanted to be clear that, there was some attack on us for talking about a $67 million budget in the general fund, while the budget's, $90 million. It's not 67, it's not 60, it's not 50, it's 90 million. So we ended up with a budget very similar to what was originally proposed, and it was called non-conservative or whatever that mess is, but we're right back to it. Now, we worked a few things with the salaries I'm agreeance with. We got the sheriff's pay up. We're headed in the right direction of that. We have a lot of other departments, as was what was discussed tonight with building codes. But I don't want the general public that is watching certain things to think that the general government fund has decreased because we're saving tax money. There was never going to be a tax increase. There was always going to be salary increases for sheriff and fire. That was always in there originally, has been in there every single year. So I don't want the general public to sit there and go, oh, thank God we cut the general fund budget. Because we didn't. We moved funds out of the general fund and put them in other places, which I'm in agreement with, but you can't say that you saved $6 or $7 million out there, because we didn't. We did what we needed to do, and I think you have worked many, many hours on this, Mr. Durham, and that is very appreciative of me and a lot of citizens. And I know it takes a lot of time to do this, especially with everything else that's going on with life in general. But I don't want the general public to sit back and hear that the general fund, or general government went down, because it didn't. The funds got moved to other places. So I just want some clarification of that, because I don't like the statements that are being made that, that went down. It did go down, but it went down because stuff was moved out of it. We could have done that, but I just wanted that statement being made. And I also, again, next year, there's additional funds that are going to be needed to pay the new 13 positions, the sheriff's salary increase, and the salary general increase, or there's going to have to be cuts. As long as everybody up here is clear with that and understands where we're headed at, because we're late in the budget process, I just don't want anybody being surprised that the budget goes up next year. Now, can we take money out of the general fund and move it somewhere else and make the general fund lower? And I don't know what that does, but apparently that's like, everybody likes to say that. But it doesn't do anything by moving money from one place to a fund. So I plan to vote for the budget. I'm appreciative of the time that it took staff to do that, because I think y'all have built this budget probably 20 times. So when it all comes out and it comes together, it's similar to what it is. I think some of the pay raises are better, Mr. Durham, than it was in the step scale. I think some of them aren't as good, but I think addressing sheriff and fire is a good thing, and continue to be a good thing. That's probably the largest step that we've made in starting sheriff pay since I've been on, because we're usually $4,000 or $5,000 more. So that's a good thing. Very appreciative of that, and hopefully we can continue moving forward in that.
So, yeah, so the general fund budget reads what, like 58 point something million? Yeah, so if you take the expenditures that was moved out of the general fund and you transfer them back into the general fund, you're at like 64.4 million. If you add back in the full year of salary wages and positions, then you're back closer to that 65.2 million, which we set as a cap for, to be under inflation and population growth. But what it does do is it gives us a tool to plan for the future. And yeah, we move some millage around. We also have some millage that's going to accrue in some counts, to buy equipment, other things. We added an extra mill to economic development versus spending that money this year, able to accrue. But also, that millage can be rolled back, or it can be rolled into debt services next year if needed to, if we need a mill there. Salaries, yeah, we're bringing initial certified deputy up to $47,500, up from $41,500 before the 3% pay raise. And I think under the stepping scale, the way it was phased in, those guys can go to about 43. I'm going off memory, so my number's not exact. Don't hang me up for it. And then the firefighter pay is going from a little over 30,000 to a little over 40,000. The previous budget was going to take them to about, I think, 33 is. By the time you phase it in, because it was a 3-year phase. And all employees got a 3% raise, which before that wasn't going to happen if we did the step and scale. But what I'm most excited about is the ability to plan for the future, to not count on over budgeting to roll into a general fund for other issues. Chief Cron spoke a few weeks ago that we had 11 pumper trucks that was bought 20 years ago at the same time. So guess what happens? You got to replace all 11 of them at the same time. So, and I think the plan is to replace 5 in the next 3 years, I believe what was mentioned. So this new the emergency service equipment and vehicle fund, that allows us to start putting some millage in there to prepare for that when that time comes. I think it's gonna be a great tool for the county. I really appreciate the time Ms. Price and Ms. Brock and everyone's put into it, and, so. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
No.
Okay, first and final reading are the following resolutions. Resolution 2023-14, a resolution establishing the Oconee County Opioid Response Task Force. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Julie and John, first and second. Any discussion?
Yes, I noticed that they wanted Ms. Brock to organize this. Don't you think the sheriff's department ought to organize this?
Mr. Hart, Mr. Root, you want to address it?
Mr. Root?
So the language came directly from the state, on how the membership of the task force and the appointment of such. It came as a state recommendation from the state task force advisory board, according to Ms. Martin, who is over the grant for that portion. I asked the same question, just to let you know.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
That is 5-0.
Okay, now we have council discussion and approval of insurance of an RFP or an RFI for renovation of the former Oconee County Courthouse. Mr. Luther Lau has requested, this be placed on the agenda. He has a presentation he would like to make. Mr. Lau?
Mr. Chairman, can we take a 5-minute recess?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Come back.
All right, need a motion to reconvene? Motion second, all in favor? Aye. All right, Mr. Law.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I am Luther Lyle. I'm a member of St. John's Lutheran Church here in Walhalla. And we are right across the street from the old county courthouse. And I think I'm old enough to remember the old county courthouse when it was torn down. In fact, you could go to service, Sunday service at my church, Lutheran Church. And then after service, you could walk across the street, and there was a park there where you could have dinner on the ground. So since that time, and you all have one of these handouts that have dates and times and everything. So the old courthouse was built in 1956, and it lasted until 2003. And then it was completely abandoned, and it has gone downhill ever since. Nothing has been done to improve it or remodel or anything. And it's a sad state of affairs. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to go through the courthouse, had a little walkthrough, and in your handout you will see what is inside now. It's pitiful. It looks like something out of Jurassic Park. There are trees growing inside and outside. The windows are broken out. So this is the view we have from our church when we come out of service. We see that courthouse across the street. So our members see that, visitors see that, and people ask, who owns that? Well, I hate to tell them who owns it, Oconee County owns it. So this courthouse is in the middle of Walhalla. It's an eyesore for Walhalla. It's in the middle of Oconee County. Nothing has been done about this over the last 20 years, so it just keeps getting worse and worse. There's absolutely no maintenance. So the windows are broken out. Debris falls off the courthouse and from the trees that are growing on the courthouse property. Our congregation has to park along that side of the street. Limbs fall on cars. Pieces of the roof come off anytime we have any kind of windstorm whatsoever. Pieces of the old roof blow off and hit the vehicles on each side of the street, actually. And the last storm we had, I think it was last week, one day late last week, the wind came in from another direction, so all the debris fell over in the parking lot next to Patriots Hall. Also, the metal coping that goes up around the roof has come loose. It's rusted over the years and it's come down, and you can see what kind of damage this can cause. I checked on what could happen if someone were injured at the courthouse. Now, people have been breaking into it. I know, if they get hurt inside the courthouse, there are no keep out or no trespassing signs there. People have been going in there because the windows are broken from the inside out. So the glass comes out on the sidewalk on Church Street. But anyway, if someone does get injured either inside the building or outside the building, they can sue the county. And I've read of cases where people sue ridiculous funds. So, the county or we could end up paying like $10 million for someone getting hurt because of the condition of the courthouse. I'm going to try to keep this short. I have a letter from our congregation, and that's in your folder there, asking you to please do something about this county property. Our church is coming up on its 175th anniversary in a few years. We're going to have people from all over the state and all over the country come in here to help celebrate with us. And we would really like to see something done before that happens. We have a few suggestions as to what you all could do. One would be to repair it, but I really think it's beyond repair. The other thing is to demolish it. If you demolish it, you'll actually have more parking around the courthouse, and that's a much needed thing right now, because they're parking all around the block and have to walk, a good distance to get to court. that would be my thing, demolish the thing, put it back in a parking lot, and maybe a small park at one end of it, that would be nice too. So, like I said, our congregation at St. John's Lutheran Church has written you all a letter asking you to please do something. And then yesterday, the organization I'm with, the Museum of Cherokee in South Carolina, on Short Street, we're directly across from the new courthouse, we wrote a letter too. And I wanted to emphasize, this is not your fault. This council did not do this. But the previous councils for 20 years has made no action whatsoever to improve the situation. And so I'm hoping this council will take action and actually do something, to make the county look better. Thank you.
So I had some discussions with Mr. Lyle and with Ms. Brock, and I've been in the building. I don't know if y'all have, but you go in this kind of like going to the zombie apocalypse, like the movies. It is a solid concrete building, looks like a bomb shelter. I think it may have been a bomb shelter. And we know the state, every year in their budget has money available. I mean, $12 million went to, state delegation also has shown us that not only are they willing, but they have the political horsepower to acquire money from the state, but we need a plan in order to do that. And I don't know if it's remodeling this building or tearing it down, what that looks like. But Ms. Brock had the suggestion to issue an RFP or an RFI, just as a final attempt to see if anybody out there has any interest in coming in and doing work in that building. I'm surprised the city of Walhalla has been as gracious as they have been at not screaming about this building. But with that said, I'd like to make a motion to direct county staff to issue an RFP or an RFI for renovations of the former Oconee County Courthouse.
I'll second that.
We got a second, so now do we have any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to amend that to add RFP for demolition of it, so we have both of those together to bring back.
Ms. Brock, you request RFP, RFI, do we need RFP or RFI?
Needed a second.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we need that to be RFP or RFI on both? How's that work for procurement?
I'm going to defer to the procurement director.
So my suggestion would be to get a price from one vendor to find out what we think it's gonna cost to do a demo. And then I don't know if y'all are wanting to see if there's companies out there that wanna come in and make it a hotel, or I need to know which way you wanna go. If that's how you want me to do the RFP, or if you want me to do it just to tear it down or to remodel it.
So we I think with that motion is both to put it out there to see if anybody's willing to do anything with it, and also to get prices on to tear it down.
I think we just need the one price from one contractor,
I say.
so
we've
you
been
know
down
your
that.
dollar
That's why.
amounts.
Sorry, Trona.
You're good.
We've been down that for years and years and years, and it was waiting and renewing and all this stuff like this, which is why it kind of became what it became. I think initially when they built it, they should have gone ahead with their instinct to tear it down, because it was supposed to be parking, because there's not enough parking in days over there. In my opinion, we've been down that road to try to get it there, and they ask for a lot of money from the council, thus the citizens, to bring it back to life. I hate to be the one to sit there, it's not my district, so I'll be the one to say that I think it needs to be tore down. We've looked at options, we've tried to do this, we've tried to think through ways of saving it, and maybe we can be the voter registration in the voter place, but it's just, I think we're gonna spend millions and millions and millions of dollars, or we're gonna wait around for somebody to say, I got some investors. And I'm not talking bad about anybody that ever came before us with that, I'm just stating that we waited a long time with different groups. I think there was 3 or 4 groups that came through that were hotels, things like that, and it just never happened. I know they got a hotel in Walhalla, so, that they're working on right now, so I highly doubt somebody's gonna magically come in and say that. So that would be, I wanna.
So is your motion then,
If you were willing to, my motion would be to send it out to bid to demolish it and create a parking lot. That's just me.
so I'll second.
So that would be a standalone motion, but I guess you need to bring your motion back to fail or whatever we're gonna do, I guess, right?
Hang on a second. Let's just get this.
I had an amended motion on top of his,
And then you changed the amendment, right?
and then, well, my,
Alternate a little bit.
well,
What if you withdraw your
I'll withdraw my original amendment.
Can I, is the cleanest way, can I withdraw my first motion after we had a second?
You can withdraw your.
I'll withdraw a second.
And I'll withdraw the first
It's all
motion.
withdrawn. Start that.
Who's on first?
Would you make your motion?
I'll make the motion to send out bids for the demolition of that due to we have put every effort forward to try to save it and do things. So I'll make a motion to send bids for demolition.
I'll second.
Along with grants, and hopefully we can get some extra money out there.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry to ask this, can you please repeat the motion?
So my motion would be to send for bids for demolition, as well as applying for grants or anything out there that can help us with the demolition process. I don't even know if that really needs to be part of it, but.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Durham, you were the second.
That's good.
Is that precise enough?
Yes, I was just very confused because we were discussing three different options. I want to make sure we
We'll
understand this.
simplify.
Do we have any further discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
That is 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this next discussion item is council consideration and discussion regarding updating and amending sign control ordinance 2020-09. I'll open that up for discussion. Mr. Davis, since you requested to be placed on, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, quickly, what I want to touch on, the digital on premises signs that are internally lighted have changed a lot. I know the DOT and things restrict how bright those things are. That signage price has come down a lot, so there's a lot of people going with that style sign. Churches and everything like that. This came through BZA, what I can look back 4 times, been approved all 4 times. So 3 of those 4 were churches, 1 of those was a gas station. So it would be my part to remove, it wasn't really a ban, but it was just a statement to not allow those kind of electronic signs. So that was what I had in there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, I guess, what direction would you like to go? Would you like to make a motion to go in a direction, or?
Well, it was just, as he drafts whatever
Okay.
council's wanting to draft, it's just a quick, my goal was, since y'all were talking about this, coming back in that September meeting, to give him some direction so he can draft whatever council's willing to do. So it's not really, I guess I can make that motion, but there's no, my motion was to direct, give the attorney, there's not really a motion,
Okay.
but to direct as we're reconstructing the sign to
As we work
allow
on that,
for, electronic signs on premises.
And me and Mr. Root discussed too, would it be better to do that in the full council or in the planning, economic development committee to score, to work it out. Any other discussion? Not hearing none. Next is RFP 23-02. Financial auditing services for the amount of $60,000 from the finance department. Procurement was approved by council in fiscal year 2023-2024 budget process. Budget is $68,000. Project cost is $60,000. the balance of $8,000. It is the staff's recommendation that council approve the award of RFP 23-02 financial auditing services to Martin and Jenkins CPAs and advisors of Columbia, South Carolina in the amount of $60,000. And two, to authorize the county administrator to renew this contract for up to 4 one-year terms, as long as the amount does not exceed the amount budgeted for this service and the services provided are satisfactory. Motion second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir, I have several questions. One, these people have been doing this for 10 years now. You people that's got a degree in business, don't we need somebody else looking into this and see if those people have been doing right for the county? I mean, what if there was an error there and they sweep it under the table next year? Now, I'm not saying that's happening, I'm just saying that's possible.
Audit the audit.
I think my response to that would be that probably maybe the next meeting, we should discuss that in executive session. Because here, let's see, it's one-year terms, right?
No, well.
So we could renew it this year because we'll have to go out for bid. There's lots of things, but I think we should discuss that in executive session.
Okay, well, if you go back there to the suggestions, they want to authorize the administrator to renew it for 4 more years. And that's what, I've got it underlined.
Do the contract for up to
4 more years.
Up to 4.
Well, up to 4 more years, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I think
One-year
that's gonna be,
terms.
that's,
So I think what it means is it's 1-year terms. So we could renew it or not renew it after next year.
okay, well, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
And Mr. Hart, just as a notation, 36 firms were contacted. This is a bid, and the one firm sent in a response bid
You didn't get any responses from anybody else?
from 35 of the firms.
I was with a CPA firm for 6 years.
Uh-huh.
We did governmental audits. I actually audited Department of County Government. There are very few firms that take that work because it's specialized. It's not general accepted accounting principles. It's a different language, just like these fund balances and all this stuff that doesn't make sense to the regular people. And so there are not that many firms out there. The big firms don't do it at all. They don't even touch this stuff. A lot of the smaller firms will do it because it's a lot of it's summertime work and they're slower because they're not doing taxes. But you don't get a lot of firms that'll go out for bid, especially where Oconee County is, because a lot of them would have to come from Greenville or we don't want to pay for them to spend a night in Oconee County, whatever. So you do have a hard time getting firms to bid on it.
Okay.
I would say based on what I have seen during my time on council, how thorough they are and the amount, it's not like one person's doing the audit. I don't know how many people they have doing the audit.
Got it. There's quite a few, but I've got several reasons here of why.
So, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I know there's time tonight. I'm in favor of it moving forward. I understand the concern with the same people doing it, but it's not like the same one person is the only person looking at our stuff. That is a huge firm. It is a top awarded firm. And I mean, honestly, if they were sweeping something under the rug, that would be criminal. So I know that firm does not do that. And I hope to God no other firm does that, but just.
How would you know?
I highly doubt that group would be. Do you expect?
No, I'm just saying that when you use the same people over and over again, if there's something that gets swept under the rug, they already know it's under the rug, the next time they come by there, they don't disturb it.
Well, I will tell you though, if you go out, if you do find another firm, it'll be a lot more money than this, just because they have to go through the whole thing over again. They don't have work papers from the prior year that they can rely on. So there's a cost to changing CPAs. Major companies do it all the time. because of exactly what you're saying. But if we could only find one firm to bid on it, and to me, this is a bargain price based on what I know in the industry, for governmental audits. But
Well, I'm gonna take your advice, that you're the expert on it.
Mr. Hart, just to alleviate some of your concerns, possibly, probably not all of them, but this CGFO, the county, the Government Financial Officer Association, thank you, it's getting late, guys. They're separate from our auditing firm, and we have received financial reporting and excellence for the past 13 years. And they have nothing to do with the audit firm whatsoever. So there's an independent agency that does look at everything outside of that. And I do believe if there was something swept under the rug, that would be almost impossible, not certainly impossible entirely, but with the change in staff that they have, so as Mr. Elliott and Mr. Davis said, it's a large organization. Now, you may have the same person presenting to you the audit findings, because that person does present every year, but their staff is not the same every year. And when they come do our audits, typically we do see new faces, because it is a good training experience for auditors that are doing other government auditing processes.
Let's move on.
All in favor?
That is 5-0.
Okay, next we have purchase order 55251, LS3P Associates, Phase 2, from the Department of Oconee PRT, High Falls, to Alexander Cannon Hill House, renovation change order number 1, amount, original purchase order $28,800, Phase 2, change order number 1, $67,500, for a total of $96,300. Procurement was approved by council in fiscal year 2022-23, 2023-24 budget process. Budget $96,300, project cost $96,300, and a balance of $0. Funding is from local ATAX fund, $28,800, fiscal year 2022-2023, and Parks and Recreation and Tourism Capital Project Fund, fiscal year $67,500, fiscal year 2023-2024. It is staff's recommendation that council approve change order number 1 to PO 55251 for project Phase 2 in the amount of $67,500 for a total purchase order amount of $96,300, to authorize the county administrator to execute documents for change order number 1, that's PO 55251, Phase 2. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. We're gonna pay these people $67,500 to walk in the upstairs of this building and say, we need a receptacle here, 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 and here, and we need the wires come, and we already got the electricity there. Now, we got the water down below, we need another pipe here and a pipe here, we're gonna put the commode over here, and we may put a shower over here, and we're gonna give them, they're not gonna drive a nail. They're not gonna put in one pipe, they're not gonna put in one receptacle, but we're gonna pay them $67,500. Now, we could have someone on staff doing this. We got those 13 positions, we can make one of them positions for a draftsman that has a degree in plumbing and electrical engineering. So I would suggest we get the,
You're saying we put an architect on staff?
I'm saying we get somebody as a draftsman to put on staff. Yeah, that, we just spent, 3 weeks ago, we just spent $15,000 on something, to where somebody goes out there and walks around with a clipboard and said, yeah, we'll do that for $15,000. So, I mean, it would behoove us to hire somebody the way we're spending money on these designs.
You're correct. It may be like the county attorney position to where it pays for itself. If it's $40,000-$60,000 per design.
We may need that to pay that bond.
Gotta be paid some way.
Have we explored possibly farming this out to a architectural student at Clemson or a group of students?
They probably have to be licensed.
Because the building is historic, then it does have to, there more regulation, more increased standards.
This building honestly has probably saved us more money than building the size building that we have, not to mention the historical side of it. But, you know, if we don't keep it up and we tear it down, we gotta build something back. So, from that standpoint, we've complained a lot about how much it's costing to build stuff, you know. In this instance right here, I'm in favor of moving forward with this.
This is the office for the park, so like Julian said, if we tear it down, I mean, what did we spend on $1.1 million on the Bandland Fire Station?
The thing is not tearing it down and maintaining it. I mean, the building standard, they're using the first floor is about expanding and refurbishing the second floor, which is down to the studs, to move the offices up there to have more office space. The downstairs will remain a visitor center as it is now. So I go out and back. Like, the building is historical. It has a lot of rainwater intrusion in it. If it was a modern building, it would have fallen down. I mean, it has a lot of, you know, the old wood in it that lasts. I understand your point about we're paying $67,000 for a plan. That seems very excessive. But I get with Bedford Park staff, I get the historical side of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I never said anything about tearing the building down. That was Mr. Davis
Oh,
who suggested.
I didn't say you did. I was saying the options.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the building should be something done. I think we ought to have a draftsman in there or something to design it and save this money rather than throwing it out in the air to somebody walking around with a clipboard and, well, we need, 10 receptacles up here. I'll take all care of that. I just think that's a little bit on the foolish order.
I'm gonna abstain from voting because I hadn't had an opportunity to tour it.
I'll vote in favor.
Any other discussion? Would you like opportunity to tour Mr. Mize?
I plan on it. I just have not had an opportunity before this meeting.
Does that purchase any deadlines?
Just one moment, Mr. Chairman. Does that push any further deadlines?
At this point, no.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to postpone until Mr. Mize can visit the site.
So can you visit the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
When did we have the meeting? Was it not the 15th of August?
September.
Yeah. But I mean, our last meeting.
As you mentioned, Mr. Davis, everybody has busy schedules.
I agree.
I have a motion. Did I make the motion or you seconded it?
Second.
All in favor of postponing? What's that? All right, so the motion to postpone failed? Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right. Now we have council committee reports, Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. That occurred on August 15th, 2023. That's it, you, Mr. Elliott.
Excuse me, the committee met at 4:30 PM on August 15th, 2023. Ms. Brock provided the committee with an overview of the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget amendments with highlights on the millage disbursement by fund, capital projects fund, and the special revenue fund, noting that no tax increase has been incorporated into this budget. The meeting was adjourned.
Okay, board, thank you, Mr. Everett. Board and commissions appointments, Agricultural Advisory Board, District 4, we have no questionnaires on file. If you have a late
Just a
submission.
comment on that. There was a commissioner that lives in District 4 that is on that in a large seat. And then I was under the understanding there was another one that was moving to District 4, so to not change that, which is why that kind of stayed empty. I don't guess that's going to occur. Maybe I was under the misunderstanding of that. So I didn't want to, if that occurred, then that could possibly put 3 people from District 4 on that board. So we'll try to figure that out. So obviously agriculture is, it's big in Wahoma. Just didn't want that to be there. It's not a huge deal because they still have quorum, so, but that's why that was kind of hanging out there. So there is a District 4 person on there. He just sits in an at-large seat at this moment. So if that move is not going to happen, then I can add a District 4 or move that at-large to 4 and we can open up at-large. So, but anyway.
Thanks for the update, Mr. Davis. I need a motion to enter executive session for council discussion regarding contractual matter related to the town of Salem, city of Seneca, city of Walhalla, and the city of Westminster. And 2, discussion regarding an economic development matter, Utica Mill project. 3, council consideration and discussion regarding a contractual matter related to public wastewater infrastructure.
So moved.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Back.
We are back.
Any motion to, exit executive session?
Some of
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Otto?
Okay, Mr. Root?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. In relation to executive session, item number one, the council discussion regarding the fire contracts for Salem, Seneca, Walhalla, and Westminster. I need a motion to direct the county attorney to draft a resolution for approval of the fire contracts as negotiated and discussed.
some of
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Vote is 5-0.
Need a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.